pushes through our area because southwest Florida, even those inland zones, we're pretty close to the coast. Florida, the peninsula, not a lot of land. So even as this pushes into some of our northern inland zones, it is still going to be a strong system, packing at least that potential, that likelihood at least, of seeing some very strong winds. We're talking about gusts of 100. Some of us could be reaching up to 120-mile-per-hour wind gusts, not sustained, but gusts across the area. Before it then begins to move northward, it actually did speed up, at least timing-wise, compared to what we had yesterday, where we had kind of a track that showed a stalling. So some good news there. It should be out across the Atlantic by Thursday evening. Here's a look at this system. The eye wall, at least the southern part of it, about 90 miles from Marco Island. This is the track it's taken. We have seen some wobbles. The yellow line kind of showing those wobbles that it has taken. But generally speaking, we are anticipating this to continue this kind of northeasterly track and eventually head towards coastal Lee and Charlotte County. The diameter of the eye wall, roughly about 32 miles wide. We may see this wind field expand even more as we are anticipating a very large storm continuing to grow as we head into this morning. Now, I'm going to time things out for you. 9 a.m., we're looking at this paralleling the coast of Collier County. So I would say, because right now the timing is 4 a.m., I would say really over the next few hours, we're going to quickly start to see conditions deteriorating in terms of some very heavy rain. Hurricane force winds at that point in time. Collier County up through Lee County. Bands of rain continue to move in. It is going to be a heavy rainfall event as well. Look out for freshwater flooding, of course, along with that saltwater flooding from storm surge. As we look at these winds by about noon, we're going to start to see that water pile up across portions first of the coast of southern Collier County. That includes Marco Island, Chokoloskee, Everglades City. That's that motion of the wind pushing that water up towards those coastal areas. As this continues to lift northward, this is the progression of storm surge. Notice we're going to start to see those winds then turn to the south and west for the Collier County coast. In Lee County coast by 4 p.m., we're looking at that storm surge really ramping up for Lee County. The coastal portions of rather Fort Myers Beach, I should say, coastal Lee County, coastal portions of Collier County, and out through the Port Charlotte area, Charlotte Harbor, Rotunda, Cape Hayes Peninsula, and also Pine Island Center. Here's that center of circulation. Eye wall at that point in time starting to move, and this is 4 p.m. Again, 4 p.m. The eye wall at that point in time continues to move onshore to Charlotte and Lee County. That is the strongest of the winds with this system. It is going to be a Category 4 hurricane moving onshore at that point in time. If you're in these areas, Charlotte, Lee County, you did not evacuate, it's going to be very loud. These winds are going to sound much like a train bulldozing through the area. It's going to be loud. You're going to need to, if you did stay behind, you need to be planning out where a good room to go would be. An interior room of your household, no windows, and even some plumbing would help if you're in a bathroom. That plumbing, actually, the pipes helps with the structure sometimes. 5:30. The eye pushing inland, we continue to see that then track over through portions of DeSoto County, Arcadia, seeing that eye wall, 7, 8, 9 p.m. From there, we start to see it exit, but we continue with that ongoing threat for storm surge. And I will be breaking down the specifics in terms of rain, wind gusts, and storm surge amounts coming up in just a bit.
Casey, can I ask you one quick question? You're talking about telling people they still have a few moments. Is that specific to Charlotte and northern Lee? Because I feel like looking at satellite or Doppler 3X, I'm feeling like in Collier County on the coast, it's getting pretty close. I'm thinking about windy conditions on the roads, and I don't want people to go out if it's too windy down there.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say Charlotte, Lee County, you still have maybe about an hour or two. Winds right now, they've been gusting to about 30, 40 miles per hour. Not the best for those areas. It's doable, and I would rather have you, if you can right now, get out and evacuate if you have not done so with those winds still in that 30 to 40 gust threshold. Collier County, it's a bit rougher. I would say about right now, starting, and we've said this throughout the morning, starting around about 5 a.m. or so is when we really start to see those conditions get rough in Collier County. So this is around that time that you need to be sheltering in place in Collier County.
All right, Casey, thank you. We're going to check back in with you in just a bit. We have reporter Claire Galt, who is driving on Sanibel right now. If we can get Claire up. Claire, what are the conditions like on the roadway where you are on Sanibel? And can you tell us anything about the water? Are you seeing any ponding out there?
You know, I was just about to come on here and tell you that the situation was similar to what I saw an hour ago, but literally just in the past few seconds, in the past few minutes, the situation has significantly increased. We just heard roaring thunder coming from the sky. The rain is now hitting me, coming onto me. And Jack, will you follow me over here for a second? I want to show you can kind of see in the back there behind these palm trees just swaying back and forth here. Now, that's pretty much, I think, an accurate representation of what I've seen just in the past few minutes. As you can expect, rain picking up, wind picking up. Now, as far as people go, we haven't seen too many people here in this hotel as expected, and not really too many people on the island. After all, Sanibel is a mandatory evacuation zone, Zone A. But I did see a family actually checking into this hotel a little bit earlier this morning. They told me they came all the way from Cape Coral because they were worried about their home flooding. So they packed up their family of 5, including their puppy, brought everybody over here, and they told me now that they're here, they're feeling more relaxed.
I think it's going to hit just the same, but the elevation is definitely going to be better. Being higher up, you're not going to be scared to be flooded out of your house. So that was the biggest thing, especially with a family of 5.
So now remember, as of 10 p.m. last night, fire and EMS will not be taking any more calls. And that's because they're actually off of the island. So if you make that choice to stay, if you make that choice not to evacuate and you need help, you're on your own. So just want to remind you that you are on your own if you choose not to evacuate. Live in Sanibel, Claire Galt, Link News.
Very sobering words, really. You are on your own if you are staying put, especially in those areas that are under a mandatory evacuation. And she was talking to a family from Cape Coral that went to Sanibel. You know, the Cape in particular, we have all of those canals, a lot of them freshwater, a lot of them saltwater. Fire crews are very concerned in particular about the southern part of Cape Coral, south of Cape Coral Parkway, because that's where the mouth of the Caloosahatchee is. And with the wind, that's where we could start seeing that storm surge there this morning.
Unfortunately, Sanibel's still an island too,
right.
But you hear talking about the elevation, your heart goes out because if they don't have anyone inland to go to, it puts that family in a tough spot.
Trying to save their family. They're trying to do what they can.
Reporter Annette Montgomery was on Fort Myers Beach. She is now headed to a safe place on Vanderbilt. On the road now, she's not driving. She's in the passenger seat. Walk us through when you last left Fort Myers Beach, what the conditions were like, where you are now, Annette, and what you're experiencing out on the roads.
Yeah, Lindsay, so as you said, we were out on Fort Myers Beach, and my photographer and I, we made the call. We were getting ready to go live, and the car started shaking while we were outside, so we finally made the call. We said, we need to get out of here. We need to listen to what officials said and evacuate, so that's what we decided to do. I'm going to flip the camera to show you what we're seeing. We're on the road right now. Now, we're going, I have to tell you, we're going 20 miles under the speed limit. The speed limit right now is 50. We are going 30. We are doing our best. My photographer, I'm going to show you guys him, Doug. He has both hands on the wheel. He is doing his best. We were hydroplaning, so we first got here around midnight, and we were hydroplaning when we first got on the road. Right now, we are not hydroplaning, so that is definitely a positive. But as I said, he is driving very slowly. We are making sure that we are very safe. When we were outside, it was very windy. His camera kept flying, or not camera, his light kept flying. The sandbags were lifting. So definitely debris is for sure an issue that we're going to look out for to see if things are flying, because we know how bad the wind is. But yes, you can see the rain right now. We also saw some lightning earlier when we were just passing through. So right now, this is the conditions we're seeing. It's definitely wet. It's definitely windy. It's definitely rainy. But as Casey said, you know, it's time to evacuate. If you were deciding to evacuate Fort Myers Beach, you know, we'll be the first ones to lead you. But definitely, I think this now is the time. It is getting now to the point where it is unsafe. We felt unsafe out there, so we made the call to leave. This is what we're seeing. We're not hydroplaning at this time. Now, one thing that I did mention to you all earlier was that we saw all of the gas stations boarded up. The windows and the doors were boarded up. We also saw bags on the gas pumps. So that's one thing I'm going to make sure to look out for now. I'm going to make sure to look and see if I see any gas stations open. But I know on our way here,
that wasn't the case.
All right, Annette Montgomery with her photographer there in the Wink News Live Drive. You please be safe out there because the wind is really going to start to pick up. You see all the water hitting the windshield. That is exactly why crews are saying, look, your time to leave in some of these places has run out.
Yeah.
So you now have to hunker in place.
And I can't imagine for the next 24 hours we're going to see many gas stations open. You need to be just sheltering and staying safe. We are already starting to see low-lying areas, I would imagine, is where these pictures are coming from, where we're starting to see some flooding. Let's get over to anchor Taylor Petrus. Taylor, where's that picture coming out of?
Yeah, so Corey, Lindsay, this is out of Lehigh Acres. I'm going to email Charles Paulette, who sent this in to us not long ago. I'm going to email him and see if I can get a more exact location of where exactly in Lehigh is. It's dark out, but you can see grass here, and this dark area here, that's already water overtaking a part of his yard here. So this is a good reminder that you don't have to be in an evacuation zone in parts of Southwest Florida to see the impacts of this hurricane that is making its way to Southwest Florida. You can just be in a low-lying area that typically sees flooding when we just have a normal afternoon storm. If you are able, and if you're seeing any of the impacts from Hurricane Ian so far at this 4 o'clock hour, and you are able to safely take any pictures or videos from your home or wherever you are hunkering down, maybe it's a family or friend's house, if you're able to get anything safely to kind of give us an idea of what's going on out there, you can send these to our email. It's tips@winknews.com. You can also send us a message on our Wink News Facebook page as well. Again, this just helps us kind of get an idea of what the conditions are looking like out there. We're here in the Wink News studio going into continuous coverage now, and we do have reporters out and about, but you out there also help us see what is going on, kind of get an idea of the conditions right now.
I think Facebook's a good idea, Taylor, because it's going to be hard for some people to be sending emails, but like she mentioned, we are here now, and we're going to be here with our meteorologist for the long haul, walking you through everything that is going to be happening, trying to help you anticipate and know when you need to go safely into your home. Casey and Nash joining us now. I think we're at the point, Casey, where people need to start thinking about what can they do to make themselves comfortable, especially if power goes out, maybe drop the thermostat a little bit, freeze those bottles of water, because looking at this, power is going to go out at some point.
It is. I mean, especially since we now have an increased likelihood that we are going to be experiencing the strongest of the winds. And you think about the fact that our soils are saturated with all the rain that we've had. With that, it doesn't take much to knock down trees when you have those very soft soils. So power outages likely. All things you recommended with the water bottles, the turning down your AC as much as you can right now. Put on that sweater if you need to, because once the power goes out, that AC might be out for a while, and you know that's what can at least help your home keep cooler, at least for a little bit more of a prolonged period of time.
And if you are hunkering in place, you know, we've had people messaging us saying, man, it sounds scary out there already, and we're not even at the main event. So, Nash, can you kind of walk us through what we're going to be hearing outside, what it's going to be like once Ian starts getting even closer now?
It is going to sound like a freight train is outside of your house. It's one of the best ways to describe it. A similar way you could describe a tornado, for example, moving nearby your house. It's going to be continuous for a long period of time until this eventually gets out of here. What I'd recommend is if you are, out and about in your family room or watching Wink right now, go and identify that room in your house that is interior, away from windows, and is surrounded on all sides by at least some sturdy structure, not windows for sure. This isn't just for hurricanes, but additionally with the tornado warnings that we're going to continue to have. Right. And if we can take weather 2 here very quickly, actually weather 1 very quickly, excuse me, I'd like to show you that northeast quadrant of the storm is what's actually drifting toward us right now. That's going to continue to not just give us these strong winds that I mentioned we'll be hearing all morning long, but also that tornado potential that will persist into this afternoon.
When you talk about that freight train, I remember from Hurricane Irma people talking about that, and we have to remember we have a lot of new folks who moved here since then. They hear that, then they hear calm. it is not safe at that moment for them to step outside, right?
Right, yeah. I mean, you've got the eye wall, but on the other side of the eye wall is the eye, and that's where it's calm. You may even see blue sky if you didn't put those hurricane shutters up, and you have a little bit of light peeking through. We see sunshine, we see clear sky. A lot of times we see a lot of birds trapped within that eye, so you may even hear a lot of chirping, sounding pleasant, but just keep in mind, following right behind that is the second eye wall on the other side, since it makes a full circle, and that's what's going to be coming next. And a lot of times, because you have the first direction of the winds at the first part of the eye wall, you got the eye, and then the other part of the eye wall, it's a completely different direction of wind. So the things that did blow around in the first part of the eye wall that passed through, those are going to start to blow the other direction, and that's when you get people that do go out in the eye, that's when you can get injuries because things then whip back around.
And I wanted to touch on the storm surge really quickly too, because we mentioned earlier the forecast of the storm surge. You may be thinking if the water's increasing a little bit, okay, we're good. But even after the storm passes, that water can still rise. Walk us through that process of how the water is going to rise even after the storm moves out.
Yeah, unfortunately, as that storm moves out, you're still going to get those strong winds. I mean, the wind is a force. It's going to continue to drag even more and more surge. We mentioned the timing even on impact of when this does push on shore, that it would likely coincide with high tide in many locations, which would only make those impacts worse. As this moves away, we don't have any of those winds to take it back out away from our shoreline. So that's going to prolong those impacts from storm surge for sure.
We're looking at 4:16 right now, so in about 44 minutes, we're going to get that latest advisory down. Do you think much is going to change? It sounds like Southwest Florida, this is our storm, and we need to shelter in place and prepare now.
Yeah, unfortunately, I just think it's going to be very similar, not much change with the new forecast cone. As you said, this is our storm. This is going to be it. This unfortunately did happen to shape up as one of the worst case scenarios here for us, which is why I need to take it pretty seriously. Don't panic. We're going to be here the entire time, but definitely take it seriously.
All right, you two, thank you very much. Very busy right now, manning Wink Doppler 3X. Let's go live now to Key West at the southernmost point. I know it's pretty tough to see, but if you look closely, you can see that infamous buoy there. And every now and then you'll see the white caps of the water. There you see it splashing on shore. This just goes to show you the power of this storm. And boy, Key West has seen a lot of flooding over the past few hours.
And they know how to deal with this. They dealt with a lot of that during Hurricane Irma. Let's get back over to anchor Taylor Petrus. And Taylor, what are we looking at right now?
So this is video also from Key West, as we just saw that massive surge of water coming over the seawall there. And this is what was happening overnight. It's also a dark video, but this is all water rushing right by this three-story, looks like a hotel here. So this was just filling the streets. This is near where that southernmost point is, closest to the water. Again, that is that storm surge bringing the water onto land. We are checking some other areas of Key West. I was also seeing some palm fronds and leaves, debris down in the roadway there on Duval Street. So this is potentially just indication of what is to come here to Southwest Florida.
Taylor, start checking those emails. You asked for people to send in video. It's looking like we're starting to get a lot. So we'll try to get thank you to anyone who's listening or watching. We'll try to get those out so everyone has a good sense of what's happening, because that's really what we want to know, is neighborhood by neighborhood, what is happening here.
Yeah, and as we've been telling you, each storm is different. Every neighborhood can be different at this point. You might be experiencing high wind gust in one place, like Naples, but right now in Charlotte County may not be as bad. Let's get out to Wink News reporter Liz Byro, who is live for us on Vanderbilt Beach. Liz, we've been talking to you throughout the morning hours. How have the conditions deteriorated where you are?
Well, since I first got out here at midnight, the conditions have just heightened overall. I mean, every time I've come out here, I've thought, how much worse can this wind get? How much louder can that howling get? And it just keeps getting louder. And so the rain, just a few minutes ago, it was probably the roughest I had seen it on the streets, just water sweeping across the streets. And I can look down here and see just puddles filling up all over the road, and just the wind is blowing and the rain is really starting to pick up.
All right, again, that's Liz Byro live for us at Vanderbilt Beach. We're also learning Governor Ron DeSantis is expected to give us another update from Tallahassee. That is happening this morning at 7 a.m. and he's going to be joined alongside Florida Department of Emergency Management and Major General with the Florida National Guard. The governor says this storm is not something to joke about.
There will be catastrophic flooding and life-threatening storm surge on the Gulf Coast region, and of course the highest risk will be in that Southwest Florida region from Naples up to Sarasota. There's also potential for flash flooding and river flooding with 10 to 20 inches across central and northeast Florida.
And I misspoke. That meeting is actually happening at 7:30 this morning at the State Emergency Operations Center. And we're going to take that for you live as soon as the governor speaks to us at that press conference.
And just note, I think we were talking with our weather team, and if Ian is running very close to the coast where we are going to be dealing with that, we might be listening in, our producers, and going to be carrying weather coverage too, because we want to get you the latest there. Now is the time to think about if you have the power go out and you've got a battery operated radio, and that's easier to listen to while you are hunkering down maybe in that bathroom or laundry room. Casey talked about being by plumbing. That helps with the structure. We are simulcasting, so you can hear Casey, Nash, Chief Meteorologist Matt Devitt walk you through as Ian's approaching on Wink FM 96.9 and Wave 101.1. And now is a good time to think about how are you going to be getting those weather warnings if you are to lose power. The radio is a great option, especially if it's battery operated. Maybe weather app alerts if you've got that. And think about that single point of contact with your family. I've got family kind of spread out inland, and there's one person they're all communicating with, so we know everyone is okay as we're kind of all working through this together.
Yeah, and you know, our family, all right, everyone check-in time.
Yeah.
You know, every hour, everyone's just checking in. Let's go out live now to downtown Fort Myers, where our tower cam looks relatively calm, actually. Every now and then, you'll see a big burst of rain and wind come through downtown Fort Myers. And we have Wink News reporter Andriana Shepard, who is live in the Wink News live drive. Andriana, or no, you're in downtown Fort Myers. What are you noticing down there?
Right now, I've noticed that the wind has picked up a little bit more than it's been in the last couple of hours since we've been down here. Also, we're starting to notice some of the palm fronds from the trees are starting to fall down. You can see them all up on this street here, just kind of piled up. Not that many, but some of them have fallen. Also, what we started noticing was a lot of the plants that are lined up downtown Fort Myers are wrapped up in kind of like a pink saran wrap, keeping them close together so they don't fly away too much. Not that many businesses are boarded up, but one of the main ones that is Izzy's down here. You can see all of the plywood just boarded up, and then they have the sign, due to Hurricane Ian, we will not be open for the safety of our guests and team members. And then they point you to their Facebook page to see when they open back up. Now, when they open back up, nobody's quite sure, but we can tell you right now the wind is starting to calm down a little bit. Not too much rain, but there is some pooling starting to happen in downtown Fort Myers in the streets. A little bit of some debris starting to follow, but everything else right now, the conditions seem pretty nice. Live in Fort Myers, Andriana Shepard, Wink News.
Andriana, thank you. And just as we were mentioning how different it can be from one area to the next, if we can take actually the Sanibel camera, it was relatively calm in downtown Fort Myers, and this is Sanibel. The causeway is off in the distance there.
Causeway, you can see, look at the wind blowing the water there. And we're going to start to notice this more and more as we're checking in with our cameras. But I think that's the best shot that we've seen yet this morning, showing that strength.
Hurricane Ian knocked out power across all of Cuba when it made landfall earlier yesterday.
And you see the water washing over the seawall here and then right into the streets of Havana. Look at those white caps popping up. Cuba's electric union said work was underway to gradually, and I think gradually is the key word, restore service to 11 million people overnight there. And take a look here showing you how dark the streets are as residents were walking through Havana with only the light of passing cars to guide them. very eerie scene there, and some of the images, just pools of water in people's home. You notice that a little bit with that old car, the vintage car driving down the street there. And also a possible tornado touched down late yesterday, Tuesday night, at North Perry Airport in Hollywood. If you can, come to your screen and look at these images. It damaged multiple planes, actually ripped apart a few hangars. Look at that.
Wow.
That
They're just
plane
tossed upside down
tossed
like that.
upside down. It seems like no problem at all. We do have confirmation at least 2 tornadoes did touch down in Broward County, and that was between about 7 and 8 o'clock last night.
And let's go over to Taylor Petrus, because Taylor, you're getting in new images of more destruction happening on the east coast of Florida. So this goes to show you this is impacting now the entire southern part of the state.
Yeah, it is, Corey. We are under that tornado threat until Thursday for all parts of South Florida. Take a look. An apartment complex here at Kings Point had to be evacuated when this storm moved through, flipping over cars right onto their roofs. Take a look at some of this damage to this apartment here. Some pretty incredible photos from the fire department. I mean, that whole screen of that balcony lanai just ripped right off like it's nothing. I mean, a huge hole missing from this part of the building as well. This was in Delray Beach, and I did read from local media there 2 people were taken to the hospital with injuries from this.
Taylor, thank you. It just goes to show you how powerful it is. Meantime, take a look at this. The National Guard gears up in Southwest Florida. A Wink News crew took this footage outside the Lehigh Acres Library, and you can see all the vehicles there. This is where the National Guard will wait out Hurricane Ian, and then they'll get directions from the Lee County Emergency Operations Center. They are fully activated right now. Now, their presence comes as Governor Ron DeSantis has announced 5,000 guardsmen have been activated, and they have been pre-positioned across the entire state of Florida. And we've also been talking about power crews stationed across the state. And KC, we're going to need them because at some point power will go out.
Yeah, absolutely, especially when it comes to the fact that we have a likelihood of experiencing the eye wall in northwestern portions of Southwest Florida. Charlotte in northern Lake County had the best chance of seeing that, and even perhaps DeSoto County as this begins to move inland. This is a 120-mile-per-hour Category 3 hurricane, where it's currently moving to the north-northeast at 10 miles per hour. We haven't seen a whole lot of changes with the 4 a.m. update. We should have a brand new forecast cone with the next full advisory that comes out at 5 a.m. In the next about hour or so. Latest forecast cone, though, we have seen this change from the 11 p.m. update, at least from the previous updates before the 11 p.m. update, is that we've seen this shift to the south and east, where the current forecast track from the National Hurricane Center that aligns pretty close to our most accurate consensus models does show landfall somewhere along Sanibel, up through, and then moving up through areas like Pine Island, northern portions of Cape Coral, northwestern portions of Cape Coral, up through the Charlotte Harbor, and then out through the Punta Gorda area as a major hurricane. This is not to scare you, but this is, unfortunately, this is our storm here in Southwest Florida. This has become the worst case scenario. It is reminiscent of Charlie. The track is very close to, I will say, almost identical to Charlie's. But the thing is, this is a completely different storm. It's much larger than Charlie. The wind field much larger than Charlie. In fact, the diameter of the eye right now, it's currently about 31 miles wide. In the entire hurricane force winds of Charlie, the wind radius of those hurricane force winds could fit within this eye. That just goes to show you how much larger the system is going to be, and which is why we continue to take this very seriously. This system, it's about this size here if we kind of do a rough comparison. Irma was bigger, but Ian is currently growing. And remember, Irma was a completely different trajectory. So if you're thinking, well, hey, I didn't flood during Irma, this has a higher flood potential for storm surge for certainly Lee and also Charlotte County, which is why those areas that did happen to have those evacuation orders, hopefully you got out. If not, I would say maybe the next about half hour to do so. Our threshold here to really stop kind of heading out on the roadways and get off the roads are those tropical storm force winds, and we're already beginning to see those gusts kind of close to that for several areas, at least in inland Lee County. I would say already those coastal zones, you need to be hunkering down. Sanibel, Pine Island, inland zones, though, or other areas like Fort Myers, maybe still another half hour. Collier County, if you're down there, we've already seen some strong winds, certainly passing tropical storm force, so you need to be sheltering in place, though. Storm surge, speaking of, 8 to 12 feet for Charlotte Harbor, down through areas like Pine Island Sound and along the Caloosahatchee River and Fort Myers Beach. 6 to 10 foot storm surge for Collier County. It comes down to the fact that we've got this counterclockwise wind direction around Ian, with those strong winds coming onshore, pushing that water to our shoreline. So I'm going to time out the storm surge progression here as we take you throughout the day. As we head into the remainder of this morning, we're likely going to start to see this kick off for our southern zone. So it's going to be for areas like Everglades City, Marco Island. You'll see the first to start to see that water piling up. 6 a.m. we're going to start to see some of that piling up against Sanibel and across the southern portion of the Cape Hayes Peninsula. As we take you towards about mid-morning, 9, 10:30, 11, we continue to see that water eventually piling up. More on Sanibel, some across the eastern coast of the Cape Hayes Peninsula along the Charlotte Harbor, and even up towards areas like the eastern part of Captiva. Here we go through 2 p.m. The system's traveling northward. You can kind of make out now the progression of how we deal with storm surge here. We see those winds out of the south for areas like Fort Myers Beach. That water will start to rise. We're going to be looking at that continuing to push up the Charlotte Harbor, water rising in the Myakka River, the Peace River at that point in time. From there, 5:30, we start to see this push up the Caloosahatchee River. At that point in time, we're going to start to see those water levels rise along the Caloosahatchee, along the western portion of Pine Island, and also start to see this along the coast of Collier County, Vanderbilt Beach, Pelican Bay, Naples area. At that point in time, we're going to start to see that storm surge increasing. And unfortunately, all this is going to be happening around high tide, which is why we need to take that storm surge threat seriously. 11 p.m., ongoing storm surge. Even as the system lifts north of our area, we still have that onshore flow. It's going to prevent those waters from receding. I do think some improvements beginning late Thursday as we finally start to see some of those winds lighten up. Speaking of winds right now, we've got some gusts ranging between 40, 50, even now 60 miles per hour in Marco Island. We're going to turn it over to meteorologist Nash Rhodes.
Yeah, as you just pointed out, now surpassing that 60 mile per hour wind gust mark here in southwest Florida. Other spots now exceeding 50 miles per hour, like Naples coming in at 51 miles per hour for those brief wind gusts. These are not sustained winds, although later on today we could see sustained winds surpassing that 50 mile per hour mark. 48 mile per hour sustained wind gusts in Golden Gate. Tracking farther to the north, we're surpassing that 40 mile per hour wind gust mark in Northport, Englewood, Punta Gorda, and Port Charlotte. Expect this pattern to continue as our coastal communities continue to ramp up those wind speeds, with that eye eventually getting closer and closer. Sky camera right now, a live shot here at the Sanibel Harbor Marriott Resort and Spa. This is our causeway camera. A little bit blurry, actually. Looks like we might have a freeze in the action there, but gusty winds and lots of rain falling in that location as one of the stronger bands is still pushing through the region. Cape Coral, you are now seeing some of that heavy rain pushing through the area. A little bit of lightning within these storms as well. No rotation as we've checked with Winks Live Doppler 3X, now the most powerful radar in all of southwest Florida. Still seeing nothing along the coastline that would at least alert us to any chances for anything to be rotating. If anything does look tornadic, we'll of course be the first to let you know. A look here at Ian's eye, still very large. In fact, over 15 miles in diameter from edge to edge. A lot of lightning, especially on the northern side of it, which is what we look for rapid intensification, as this is still forecast to be a Category 4 hurricane by landfall. And even those outer bands are already producing a substantial amount of rain showers for us here locally. Across the area, you're seeing most of the coastline getting inundated with at least some spotty showers and storms. More storms pushing through the Arcadia, DeSoto County, and Highlands counties area. Otherwise, out towards the Lake Okeechobee waterfront, we've had aerial flood advisories extending from northeastern sections of Hendry County into southeastern sections of Glades County. For now, we will watch that area, but you're getting a little bit of a break from that particular band. more bands are on the way, especially for Collier County, as you'll be seeing the brunt of the force here coming up soon. These are the showers and storms we will be watching, though, for loose rotation, as Ian's wind field is still very strong in the upper levels. Whenever you have those strong winds and brief showers pushing on shore, that difference in friction and difference in wind speeds with height can give you a little bit of spin, and that's exactly what we have here. We've seen on and off tornado warnings with these particular storms, even a few tornado warnings in our viewing area, but I do want to direct your attention to one graphic here. No confirmed tornadoes from Ian thus far here in Southwest Florida. We have had unconfirmed reports, but all of them at least have stayed outside of the Wink viewing area, most of which east of Lake Okeechobee. Here's a look at the tornado watch that we still have in effect for our area. This will continue at least until Thursday by 5 a.m. Some spots seeing those expire a little bit earlier on the East Coast, but at least here in Southwest Florida, from Highlands County down through Collier County, our tornado watch will expire by 5 a.m. on Thursday. As we get new warnings and new updates from the National Hurricane Center, we'll of course keep you updated, but for now, back to you.
And Nash, I want to point out, we would like to take that Sanibel Causeway camera live again. And the reason we're doing this, Nash, you're right, it is out, we believe. Our reporter, Claire Galt, who is safely stationed as safely as possible on Sanibel in a elevated area in a hotel, just sent an email saying they lost power on the island. You were checking in. What did you find out?
Yeah, I was just checking in. Actually, LCEC power outages. There is at least 1,000 reported outages just on Sanibel Island. So if Claire is saying her power is out at the Sanibel Hotel, it appears as if for now we have lost our Sanibel camera, because this is the last shot it recorded before it froze. So it looks as if power outages are now really starting to increase when it comes to LCEC customers on Sanibel, and particularly in Cape Coral. We're starting to see those grow right now as well.
Let's take that live look of Pierside Grill, I believe it is, here on Fort Myers Beach, getting a sense of what they are dealing with there. Still dark, but you see the rain, and it's clear it's very windy out there. Nash, do you have wind gusts for Fort Myers Beach right now? What are they experiencing? Or Casey? 40?
Right around 40-mile-per-hour wind gust. We've seen on and off kind of brief periods where they've seen hardly any wind gusts, and then brief periods where they've seen 30 to even 35-plus wind gusts. For now, 40 would be a safe guesstimate as to the max wind gust we've seen there.
So I think it's safe to say now it is no longer safe, definitely, to be traveling on the bridges, the causeway, because at 40 miles per hour, they advise you do not drive on the bridges.
That is correct. Yes, Corey.
Okay. So if you are still on one of those barrier islands, first of all, we feel for you, and we're going to be here helping you through that. But you need to, at this point, shelter in place and make sure you are in an interior room, because we're seeing from Nash holding up a sign saying 35 to 40 mile per hour gust on Sanibel. Let's check back in with Taylor Petrus. You made the call out, send us your pictures, and thanks to so many people out there listening, you're getting us eyes all over the area.
We are, and it's extremely helpful, Lindsay. Another area of Southwest Florida experiencing those strong wind gusts right now, Marco Island. I know this video is dark, but this is looking out to a pool cage, which really shows the wind and rain whipping through here. Another area that's a little more lit up here from a balcony, and you can kind of see the trees lit up down here. You see those palm trees just blowing in the wind. I'm looking over to their wind gust graphic over there, and I believe I see Nash 61 gusts of 61 mile per hour winds happening down in Marco Island. I've gotten some videos all the way up in Punta Gorda, other parts of Lee County as well. We'll continue to show those.
All right, Peter, Taylor, thank you so much. I believe we're hearing from our producer that I think we have someone joining us on the phone. Nicole, can you tell me who's joining us right now? Hello, thank you for joining us. I'm sorry, this is Lindsay, Corey, you got Casey and Nash. Alan, good morning. Thanks for calling in. If you have a question for our weather team, now is the time to ask, because they are sitting right here at the desk and ready to answer questions.
Well,
I believe, Alan, you live in Cape Coral?
I do, actually, and we're about a block and a half off the water. We're in the zone that was requested to evacuate about 5 a.m. this morning, or actually yesterday morning. But, we deemed it holding up well. We haven't seen anything but just a few tree shakes here and there. Again, I want to thank you guys for your coverage. It's been dead on. I've been watching since, basically about 24 hours now. So thank you again.
Well, Alan, first, I'm so glad you're safe and you're doing okay in your home. Can you tell us what part exactly of the Cape you're at, maybe even a street, so we can better get an idea of where you are and how close you are to the water?
So we're south of Beach Parkway and 1 block from Sandy.
Okay, so you're very close to the water. Your area was impacted by those tornadoes we saw years ago, so you know how scary these situations can be. Do you plan to stay there the entire time? I'm assuming at this point you really just have to hunker down because the weather is deteriorating.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the funny thing is, the street that we live on, a tornado came just up this same street then, and we built a house in that same spot that the tornado cleared off for us on the last hurricane. So,
well, Alan,
so we're kind of throwing the dice here, but we built it strong.
We're going to be here with you, so hang in there, and we're going to talk to our meteorologist now and hopefully answer your question of what you should be expecting in the next few hours. Can you answer that, Casey? Specifically, maybe if you're in Cape Coral, you're hearing the wind and rain now.
Yeah, you can see behind us, I'm sure you're seeing some of those heavy bands now move in. Winds there, they've been picking up to now tropical storm force. Alan, what you're going to see as you head into, especially I would say beginning around 9-10 a.m. this morning, are for those winds to continue to really increase. We're likely going to start to see hurricane force winds in areas like Cape Coral, closer to about beginning as early as 1 p.m. for some of those areas. We're going to be looking at potential landfall, so that would be just north of Cape Coral by around 4 or 5 o'clock is what our models are currently predicting. So that's going to be the time where you're going to be hearing some very strong wind. You might get a part of that eye wall. Sounds like Corey, I'm not really, is it southern Cape?
It's southern part of the Cape.
It's southern part of the Cape. So that eye wall, we're expecting to at least get very close to that. We're going to be looking at in the southern portion of the Cape, likely winds close to 100 miles per hour for those wind gusts. So you just need to hunker in place, find a interior room if you can. It's beginning after around, I would say, 1 p.m. noon that we're going to start to see that storm surge threat increase for that portion of Lee County. If you have a second story of your, you may see the water rise. That's definitely a possibility with the forecast right now at 8 to 12 feet. So if you have maybe a second level of your home, and if you do see that water rise, that might be a better option for you with an interior room in that second level.
You talk about that wind, and we have reported at length, firsthand, you drive in the Cape every day, all the construction.
Everywhere.
That's everywhere, and that's a major concern for a lot of families that live out there.
Yeah, even in my backyard, right? We have a construction site. If you drive in the North Cape, there's homes everywhere. So, builders did what they can to secure those sites as best as they could, but there are hundreds and hundreds of new home construction sites. So you're talking 2x4s, bricks, concrete. You have the trusses of the roofs going up on the homes. Those can be projectiles in this type of wind.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important to, as Casey mentioned, find that room away from windows to protect yourself. I've even seen people, if say they have an open section, say of an interior room or closet, where they will put their mattress up as a kind of last line of defense or protection. That's proven to be somewhat effective in some cases.
I know it sounds silly, but you even mentioned the helmet, and I grabbed the headphones for my kids just to kind of maybe help block out some noise, but even maybe going a step further, to explain the helmet and covering your head.
Something as simple as a bicycle helmet, or even a baseball helmet, for example, a catcher's mask, whatever you have in your house, something that can protect your head, the most vital part of your body to protect. There have been studies, especially with tornadoes, and as we continue to deal with those, it's even more effective. Strong tornadoes, people that do put on those helmets have a much higher survivability rate than those that do not protect their head, and the same goes with hurricanes.
It may feel funny, But hey, you got to do what you got to do in these situations to protect yourself and your family. Let's go over to Taylor Petrus now. Taylor, again, you asked our viewers to send in pictures and videos, and you are getting them in this morning.
Absolutely, Corey, Lindsay. And we just heard from Alan Fisher. Actually, he was one of the first to send in videos, and he described what he was seeing in his home in Southwest Cape Coral, right off of Beach Parkway. He also sent us in this video, which I want to play for you here. So you see the palm tree in his front yard, blowing in the wind, all the palm trees around him. And then he pans over to the grassy area here. You can see the water on the ground. You can tell it has been raining steadily there. And that part of Cape Coral, that water is starting to collect on the side here. Let me stop it there. You see all that water here in that ditch here that is meant to collect the rainwater to prevent it from flooding. But if this continues, it could be problematic for this part of Cape Coral. So we want to thank Alan for sending this in and even coming on air to speak with us. We really appreciate you being our eyes and ears for all parts of Southwest Florida.
And we'd like to give you a look at just all of the amount of preparation and people that go into making sure our community is safe. The Lee County Sheriff's Office posted this picture around 11 o'clock last night, and that is actually the Lee Emergency Operations Center. It was all hands and is still all hands on deck. They're now operating 24 hours to make sure when they can respond to you. I do just want to mention, and our meteorologists have been saying now is pretty much the time you need to be sheltering in place. But if you are someone who lives coastal and you're thinking maybe I can hop inland real quick, I was in the newsroom about 45 minutes ago. I heard someone call our assignment desk and say, can I go to a hospital? Folks, hospitals and airports are not public shelters. Every county has opened up shelters. A lot of them are at elementary and middle schools. You are not going to be able to seek shelter at a hospital or the airport this morning, and we are quickly in closing in on that time when you really can't be out on the roads trying to find somewhere else to go at this point.
Yeah, you know, we've had so many new people, even since Hurricane Irma, right back in 2017. So many of you are new, and unfortunately, living in paradise, we have to deal with. Yeah, we have to deal with these storms. And if you take a look behind us, this is Wink's Live Doppler 3X, and it shows you the magnitude of Hurricane Ian. Charlotte County in particular now is working really hard to keep you safe from Hurricane Ian's path. Let's get to Weeknews reporter Zach Oliveri. He has the latest now from the Charlotte County Emergency Operations Center.
Ever since we first got here to the Emergency Operations Center here in Charlotte County, we've started to see the storm pick up a little bit. The rain's picking up, starting to come in sideways. We could feel some of the wind. We can even hear some of it outside occasionally. And the biggest thing, the biggest message that I've gotten from public information officers that I've spoken with since we arrived here is that people need to take the storm very seriously, to stay inside. Don't go out in this storm, and especially because there's some people who didn't follow the evacuation and they're in some serious danger, especially because first responders won't be able to come get them. They're going to be pulled off the road once the wind hits 40 miles per hour. And then once that comes in, they won't be able to help you if there is an emergency. They will be able to go back out once that recedes, and then Public Works will go out as well to assess the damage, along with Charlotte County Fire, with chainsaws to clear up any road debris. And we're going to have a latest update from Charlotte County officials at 10 a.m. this morning. We will be at that press conference to bring you the absolute latest information on what Ian poses as a threat for Charlotte County. In Charlotte County, Zach Oliveri, Wink News.
All right, Zach, thank you. And I did get a video from a viewer up in the Deep Creek community in Punta Gorda. Here's what it looks like there right now. It's a short video, but you can see those palm trees whipping with the light behind them here. The road is wet as well with that consistent rain coming down. So all the way from Charlotte County down to Marco Island, we are seeing the impacts of Hurricane Ian. I just got a couple more coming in from Marco Island, where we're seeing the highest wind gusts right now. I'm going to work to get you another look at those.
And I want to take a look at the Fort Myers Beach Pierside Grill Sky Cam. I know it's raining, but if you can kind of squint through here and make out some of the waves off in the distance, you can see those are pretty far off where they typically are, where those waves break and where the water begins and meets the shoreline. It's all the way back here. We've been looking at ongoing reverse storm surge across our coastal areas, which you're going to notice really throughout this morning. We're going to continue with this offshore flow, but eventually they're going to return to normal and then eventually return to above normal levels when we get that storm surge, when those winds start to return back to more of an onshore steering pattern. 78 degrees is what they're currently at, but what we're really paying attention to is the wind direction. It's coming out of the east-southeast. That's what's pushing and kind of pulling this water away from our coastal lines, which is why a lot of us, even as you wake up this morning, you're going to notice that a lot of the water levels across our rivers, Caloosahatchee River, down through our coastal zones, Collier County coast, Lee County coast, Charlotte County coast, you will see that those waters will have receded for some areas quite a bit. Those winds, by the way, gusting now at 40 miles per hour. There is that wind direction that we're currently paying attention to for that reverse storm surge. We're wind sustained now for some of Collier County, closer to about 20 to even 33 miles per hour sustained currently in Marco Island. So winds really beginning to pick up. That will be an ongoing trend as we head throughout the day, with the strongest winds anticipated as we head towards this afternoon. We're talking about early, mid-afternoon, and on into the early evening hours. Essentially the second half of the day, anytime after lunchtime, is when we're really going to start to see some of the windiest of the conditions. So storm surge, although we're receiving that reverse storm surge at the moment, again, those water levels will begin to rise back to about that normal level. I would say after about noon for a lot of us, we'll start to see the water levels then coming in. And unfortunately, our high tide today, really for most areas on average, is between about 3 p.m. to about 6 p.m. this evening. Now, these numbers here, they do account for high tide, but it's a range. High tide could give us more of the upper level of this range for these areas highlighted. So that's coastal areas of Charlotte, Lee County, coastal zones of Collier County, highest storm surge expected closest to where that eye will be, which was expected to pass through between Lee and Charlotte County, 8 to 12 foot storm surge for the Caloosahatchee River, those areas that are along the Pine Island Sound, areas up through Charlotte Harbor, the mouth of the Myakka and Peace River, and along areas even towards the western portion of the Cape Hayes Peninsula on that coastline to areas like Englewood. That extends down through about Bonita Beach. From there, we've got about a 6 to 10 foot storm surge, Bonita Beach, southward through the coastal portions of Collier County, over towards Marco Island and out towards 10,000 Islands and Everglades City. So kind of here's a closer look at some of the reasonable worst case scenarios, I will say. This is a map that the National Hurricane Center puts out primarily for emergency management, but this does give us an idea of what the reasonable worst case scenario would be, which is what we want to plan for here, because we are looking at a big time dangerous threat of storm surge with this system. So just kind of a closer look at some of these numbers. Southern portions, coastal portions of Cape Coral, if you are closer to the water in those areas in red, that's where you could see storm surge of over 9 feet. Areas in orange just slightly inland, 6 to 9 feet. In yellow, about 3 to 6 feet. And if you want to zoom into where exactly your house is at street level, you can do that by going to the National Hurricane Center's website. They have this same map, but you can zoom into it. Just scroll down once you go to that home page, click, and you'll see the little box for Hurricane Ian. And below that, there's going to be a little box that's listing things like the tropical storm force wind possibility, and also a threat for this is called storm surge inundation. It's that map that you can zoom into. But notice other areas in red, Cypress Lake, as we hop on over to the Fort Myers area across the other side of the Caloosahatchee River, Iona, you're also in that orange to red phase stage, Punta Rasa, and along really the banks of the Caloosahatchee River, you currently have the potential of seeing that storm surge of 9 feet or over. Areas like North Fort Myers, these areas in red are looking at the highest threat of storm surge that decreases the farther inland you go, and the farther west of State Road 78 through that area. Fort Myers Shores, you also have some of the areas that are closest to the banks of the Caloosahatchee River. Also looking at that reasonable worst case scenario of storm surge over 9 feet. And I do anticipate this is going to be a big issue for us with the current forecast track that we're looking at. Up through the Charlotte Harbor, we've got red outlining the Cape Hayes Peninsula, red up through areas near Port Charlotte and also the Peace River, and down through those areas along the banks of the mouth of the Peace River, and also closer to and just south of Punta Gorda, that red-orange, meaning storm surge between about 6 to 9 feet, 9 feet plus for those areas in red. Isles of Capri, you currently are in that red zone. That is storm surge of over 9 feet. Down through Marco Island, orange, that means 6 to 9 foot storm surge will be possible. In Everglades City, you currently have the potential to see 9 feet of storm surge or more, decreasing as you head towards Copeland and past portions of Tamiami Trail. But even Tamiami Trail has that portion, at least highlighted in red there, of picking up over 9 feet of storm surge. For specifics, county by county, including rainfall and wind, we're going to go turn it over to meteorologist Nash Rhodes.
Yeah, I want to give you an update if you're wondering, what about my county specifically and what can I expect as far as impacts go? I made this graphic for you to go county by county and give you the updates here. Rainfall totals suspected for Collier County between 2 to 5 inches. Unfortunately, that's actually going to be on the lower side relative to what a lot of other spots will likely receive. Storm surge between 5 to 8 feet is expected for Collier County. As we travel farther to the north into Lee County, those totals go up a little bit more. 8 to 12 feet of storm surge expected for coastal Lee County. Wind gusts between 70 miles per hour and 105 miles per hour plus. That plus is added for the off chance that we do get a landfall in Lee County, which is still very much in play here. 3 to 7 inches of rainfall is expected for Lee County. That timing between now and Thursday. 4 to 9 inches expected out towards Charlotte County. Still keeping that 8 to 12 foot storm surge forecast, with wind gusts now ramping up to 85 miles per hour, up to 125 miles per hour. Now again, this is what you can expect. This is not an exact forecast, as we're still going to pinpoint exactly where that eye is going to make landfall. But for now, these are pretty safe estimates as to what you can expect with Ian. Sarasota County, unfortunately, seeing the maximum impacts from this likely. Wind gusts up to 85 miles per hour to 125 plus miles per hour expected. We'll also see 8 to 12 feet of storm surge along Sarasota County with tornadoes possible. Flooding will be a risk both from saltwater and also land-based freshwater flooding from our rain showers that we will be seeing all day long today and all day tomorrow. Those rain showers not letting up anytime soon. DeSoto and Highlands counties also seeing 4 to 8 inches of rainfall. Think of it as a slider. As you go farther east, those rainfall totals a little bit less. The farther you get towards the coastline, we're going to bump up those rainfall totals to that 8-inch mark. And additionally, we could even see hurricane force winds extend as far inland as DeSoto County. And it wouldn't even be a complete surprise if that eye were to eventually make it towards Highlands County and continue to produce those damaging straight line winds, perhaps even hurricane force winds. We'll touch on the wind field in just a moment and explain how large it is for Ian and how that could be possible. But for now, as we travel farther south, 2 more counties I want to add to this list. If you are in Glades County or you are in Hendry counties, just note 3 to 5 inches are expected for rainfall totals. Tornadoes will be possible, as we've already had several tornado warnings within these counties. And additionally, wind gusts between 50 to 80 miles per hour will be expected with this particular system. We could even bump up those totals if a landfall were to shift farther south for those counties. A quick check-in with Ian's wind field. This is a very important graphic I can't stress enough. Look how far away from the center of this hypothetical landfall that we see those hurricane force winds extending almost 3 counties inland here in southwest Florida. And we could expect this to drift to the north and east, bringing those damaging straight line winds inland out towards the Lake Okeechobee area. Tropical storm force winds are expected across all of southwest Florida, regardless of where you live. And Ian's current wind field making it a very large and more effective storm, much larger of a wind field than we saw with, for example, Charlie. We'll continue to keep you updated with the latest path from Ian as it continues to wobble back and forward. And in moments, we should have the latest forecast cone from Ian coming out soon.
And Nash, actually, while you were speaking with us, Casey Sherman kind of flagged us in the Weather Center and said, hey, we've got some updates here. It sounds like this Hurricane Ian is now a Category 4 hurricane. So we are going to be dealing with some very, very serious conditions. It's going to be a very long day for everyone here.
A very long day. And, let's go over to Casey Sherman. She's been warning us that this has the potential to reach Category 4 strength, which it is now. Casey, are you ready, or do you need us to?
I think she needs just a few more minutes.
Let me just hop on. I want to get you this as soon as possible. Okay. So let me go ahead and show you this. Yes, it is a Category 4 hurricane now. The hurricane hunters did find 140-mile-per-hour max sustained winds, and this is anticipated strengthening over those very warm waters. This is that latest forecast cone from the National Hurricane Center. This does show a Category 4 hurricane at landfall, whereas we zoom in here, we really haven't seen too much change in the track. We are still anticipating a landfalling system. Looks like it's been nudged just slightly to the north and west. So that's a little bit of a change, which we have seen consensus models, I will say, nudge a little bit to the north and west. If that's a trend that continues, that would be slightly better news for us. That would mean that, maybe we could miss some of that eye wall for some of those areas, but really haven't seen a huge change. Still looking worst case scenario here in Southwest Florida. Not to scare you, but this is a big situation. And right now, Category 4 at landfall, where it looks to be somewhere near the Captiva area, up through the Cape Hayes Peninsula, and then through areas like Port Charlotte before it enters into the northwestern portions of DeSoto County.
And so, Casey, someone might be hoping, maybe it'll keep, shifting to the west, or these big jumps. We're just past that point, correct?
I think if we look at the current data with the radar, here it is, and you can see kind of that track that it's been taking, lining up with the latest National Hurricane Center track, and you can see it's pretty much in line with that northeasterly track. You can see how that's kind of moving nearly along that center. So while we have seen, and this is what the National Hurricane Center is looking at, these consensus models that did happen to nudge slightly off to the north and west, we're still not expecting much change. Even with this little nudge, likely not to see much more nudging, I think, continue. I still think this is going to be more than likely, a Southwest Florida direct hit.
All right, Casey, thank you. And we're going to let her kind of gather all that data and analyze all of it. She was showing, though, 2 p.m. near Sanibel, and our reporter, who is as safe as she can be in a hotel, Claire Galt, sent in an email, and she said, boy, she's really starting to feel that wind from the glass just shaking and noticing it start to pick up. So conditions are going to worsen at this point.
In fact, Annette Montgomery, who's live in downtown Fort Myers, I believe. Annette, what are you noticing where you are?
Well, Corey, I moved from one Zone A in one county to a different Zone A in another county. So I was just on Fort Myers Beach, but now I'm in Naples, Zone A, coastal Naples. So I'm going to show you what I'm seeing. Seeing wind, you can see the trees definitely swaying. Also, I'm seeing some ponding on the roads. I'm going to have my photographer, Doug, pan down so you can see we are seeing some ponding. You can actually see the wind is so strong that it's pushing the ponds in the road. So yes, we're seeing ponding. We're seeing some flooding a little bit in this area. Definitely one of the areas that county leaders said people need to evacuate. This was one of the first areas that they issued evacuation orders for. Now, some things to keep in mind. Collier County leaders did say that if it gets bad enough, they will not get on the road. They cannot get their cars on the road. It will not be safe. You can see there are no cars currently on the road. We didn't see a lot on our way here. We just got here about half an hour ago. We didn't see anyone else on the road. So definitely you can tell people are either evacuating or heeding advice of local officials and staying indoors. Now, we will stay here and bring you all any new updates, but all I can say right now is it's just windy, it's wet, the wind is definitely picking up, but it's not as bad as Fort Myers Beach, but who knows, it may get worse very soon. But we'll definitely keep you all updated online and on air as soon as we have any more information. Live in Naples, Annette Montgomery, Wink News.
So glad to see her in a safe spot. Last time we checked in with her, the wind was blowing her all around on Fort Myers Beach. A reminder, because now is the time to be thinking about how you are going to be getting critical information over the next 12 to 18 hours. If you have battery-operated radio, we are also simulcasting on Wink FM, which is 96.9. and wave 101.1. So I know that Chief Meteorologist Matt Devitt plans on being here as probably the midday, late morning hours start to come, and he, along with our entire weather team, are going to be here walking you through every step of the way. Let's turn over to Taylor Peters because she is getting new images coming down Marco Island, an area that's going to see all of this first. And this video, I think, showing us just a little bit of the power Ian's going to be bringing.
Yeah, they are seeing some of the biggest wind gusts right now. Yvette, she sent us another video from her pool cage. I think she turned on the lights for us. Thank you so much for letting us kind of see the trees behind whipping in this wind that is going on right now in Marco Island, where people are hunkering down as Ian continues to make its way through Southwest Florida. Ed Rose, another Wink News viewer, he sent me in this video, and take a look at those palm trees there, really blowing in the wind. So again, if you are able to safely take any videos, pictures of what you are seeing near your home, please send them into email while we do have service tips at winknews.com. Also, our Wink News Facebook page is a good option. Just lets us get an idea of what the conditions are looking like out there. Again, if you can do it safely.
All right, Taylor, thank you. If you're just joining us early this morning, Hurricane Ian now a Category 4, and we heard Casey Sherman say moments ago, believing going to be making landfall as a Category 4. So we are in for some serious situations. We want to get out to Claire Galt, who is stationed on a balcony on Sanibel Island. Claire, how have things changed for you in the last 30 minutes to an hour?
If you were watching our 4 o'clock newscast, you remember me coming on here and telling you that things were bad. Now they've gotten so much worse. Just 10 minutes ago, I was sitting inside. We lost power. Our devices are still charging, so I suspect a generator has kind of kicked in. Who knows how long that will really last. Doors are slamming shut here. I hear them, I see them, but it's so much more than just the power and the doors. Jack, will you follow me over here? I want to show them this. If you can see how much rain is coming down right now. I don't know if we can even show them over the balcony right here. The palm trees are swaying. I mean, it's just incredible how quickly things have really taken a turn here. It seems like just an hour ago, we were just seeing a little bit of wind, a little bit of rain. Now it's severe. Now, I want to come over here if we can just go one more place. These doors are those doors I'm talking about. They've been slamming shut. When I'm sitting inside, I can actually feel the rain hitting me from inside, and I can feel the wind too. It's chilly. It's cold in there. You can see it. You can feel it. It's definitely increasing, guys. So, I mean, there's a reason that they put that mandatory evacuation order in place here in Sanibel, and I can definitely see why now. Even now, rain is coming down even harder. Even harder. Live in Sanibel, Claire Galt, Wink News.
All right, Claire, thank you very much. We're joined now at the desk by Weather Authority meteorologist Casey Sherman and Nash Rhodes. We just got that new advisory, the new cone from the National Hurricane Center. Ian, now a Category 4 storm.
It is now a Category 4 storm, and I mean, this is not something we didn't expect.
Right.
We did expect additional strengthening. This has been the forecast the whole time. Category 4 storm is looking likely, and that's what we're looking at by landfall as we head into this afternoon here in Southwest Florida. So look at that new forecast cone. I'm going to take a look at weather 2, if you could pull that up. This just came out here for the 5 a.m. advisory. It just came out minutes ago, and there is that forecast cone where we are still expecting landfall here in Southwest Florida as an extremely powerful hurricane. That landfall right now projected to be around 2 o'clock. As we zoom in here, all we've seen really as far as the changes go with this latest cone is just a slight nudge to the north and west. That still means big time impacts here for us, including storm surge, rain, and wind as it passes through perhaps the Cape Hayes Peninsula. Right now, that's the forecast track, making landfall somewhere Captiva, Sanibel, up through the Cape Hayes Peninsula, up through Port Charlotte, and then up through portions of southern Sarasota County and northwestern DeSoto County.
And, you know, Casey, I just had somebody text me, a friend, and say, Cat 4 landfall, words I cannot say. But like you mentioned, we anticipated this. I think we all need to take a deep breath for a moment, because that is why we all in emergency management talk about be prepared for the worst, because the worst can happen. So, you know, it sounds, oh my goodness, category 4, but calm yourself down for a moment. These guys are very experienced. They're going to be walking us through all of it, along with Chief Meteorologist Matt Devitt. We talk about a Cat 4 Nash. Strength-wise, what does that mean? Does that change anything for people hunkering down and sheltering today?
Yeah, important thing, even with your friend mentioning, you know, oh my gosh, it is now Cat 4. It's a very small bump up from where we already were with a strong Category 3 going into this. The pressure levels in the last advisory were at roughly 953, I believe, in millibars. We've seen a big drop now down into the lower 940s. That tells us that, of course, it was strengthening that whole time, and we could see it there on radar. In fact, it went through what's called an eye wall replacement cycle. We saw that late last night leading into early this morning. Afterwards, a lot of lightning lighting up on the outer edge of that. We could see it on Winx Live Doppler 3X, the powerful outer wall of that eye, and it showed all the signs that we saw of strengthening, and really not surprised to see that they bumped up the category in this latest update.
And if we can take Winx Live Doppler 3X full just to see how powerful the system is. We can hear it here in downtown Fort Myers, another band coming through, dropping heavy amounts of rainfall. Casey, you know, when a new band kind of swirls through, how much rain can one of these bands drop in just a matter of minutes?
I mean, we're looking at rainfall rates within these around an inch per hour. Wow. So it's not, you know, the heaviest of the rain that we've ever seen here in a thunderstorm in Southwest Florida, where sometimes we can get rainfall rates of, you know, 5-6 inches per hour. But the thing is, with these bands, they train over what's called training, like you think of a choo-choo train, the same exact area over and over and over again. And that's what really allows for that rainfall to eventually pile up. And that's what leads to then freshwater flooding.
Do you guys, with what you have right now, think that this is going to be something sitting and stalling, where it's just going to be moving very slowly? Or are you getting a sense that at least there's going to be some movement, Nash, with this?
Casey, correct me if I'm wrong, but with the latest trends we're both looking at, it seems like it might move a little bit faster than what we at least anticipated yesterday, where we were seeing some trends in the slowing down direction. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, we saw, even with the forecast coming from the National Hurricane Center yesterday, a very slow pace by the time it reached us, or at least close to the west coast of Florida and moved inland. I will say we have this one factor, it's pushed it farther south. It's the trough of low pressure, which is why we're now seeing that high chance of landfall here, and why that track has drifted south. But also with that trough of low pressure kind of picking up that storm, it is going to be moving faster. So, you know, silver lining.
Yeah, I mean, we got to look
faster,
at that, right?
which means we won't be looking at least as prolonged of impacts.
And if we can, take tower camera, because this really goes to show you when a band comes through, there you see it, how much rain this is dropping. Not so much wind downtown Fort Myers, at least specifically right now, but we're really seeing the rain. How much longer do you think it's going to take until we start to see, bottom line, the worst of the impact from this?
You know, I think the worst of the impact, it's going to begin really, I mean, now it's beginning. Winds going to start to pick up really here as we head towards sunrise. The worst of the conditions, we're talking about right around that landfall time, the strongest of the winds, that is going to be around that 1 to 3 p.m. time frame is when we're expecting that eye wall, which packs the strongest of those winds, hurricane force winds, and that's what's going to be moving on shore between that about 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock time frame.
We're kind of narrowing down that time frame a little bit from the larger noon to 6 to 7 o'clock we were originally thinking. So as it's getting closer, we're able to pinpoint that forecast, and we'll also be able to update some of our forecast totals as well.
All right, guys, we know you have a lot you're still looking into. We appreciate you joining us here. Let's go out live to our reporter, Adriana Shepard, who has been in downtown Fort Myers. Last few times we've checked in with you, Andy, it was nice and dry. It looks like you are in the car now. What is it like in downtown?
The rain really picked up probably about 10-20 minutes ago max. Wind not so bad, but the rain is really kind of coming down. I'll try to switch the cameras off here. You can see everything's kind of starting to puddle up a little bit. You can even see the wind kind of pushing some of that rain to the side. back behind us a couple blocks, we actually saw a couple of trees laying down on some power lines. So we know that's not pretty. That's not good at all. But yeah, like I was saying, the rain is coming down pretty heavy all along the sides of the roads here. You can see all the kind of puddling happening right now. The wind is pushing some of the rain off of the streets and onto the sides. There's only been this one car in front of us for a little bit while we've been driving, but other than that, the downtown is pretty empty. Lots of rain on the roads. The wind is pushing some of the rain back toward us and just wiping it off of the streets. It's starting to look kind of dicey out here. But for now, live in Fort Myers, Andriana Shepard, Link News.
And right there, also, there were signs posted on some of those poles saying it will be closed for parking on Thursday. Proceed with caution there. Now, should you lose power, which has already happened to more than 1,000 people, even close to 2,000 people in Lee County, according to LCEC outage numbers, here's something that you can do. First of all, keep food safe by leaving the refrigerator and freezer doors closed as quickly as possible. Use food from the fridge first. The freezer, that food will last longer. And then be sure to turn off and unplug all unnecessary electric devices. Now, if you still do have your power, but you want to do some prep work before that, be sure to have one or more coolers with ice to keep your food cold, and also a digital thermometer. That'll be really helpful so you can check your food's temperature. And then, as she was just referencing in her live shot, saying that there were some tree limbs or tree branches on top of maybe a generator or power line there. Remember, even after the storm, do not touch any electric power lines, and be sure that you are using a generator far away, probably about 20 feet away from your home.
And I know in some areas it may not feel right now like we are in the worst of it, but because we are anticipating, as you heard Casey mention, from now into the evening, things to get bad, closures are happening. Lee Convenient Care offices are closed. So that means Lee Health reduced their telehealth price to $20, and they are available, the telehealth, 24/7. You can use that on your smartphone, tablet, or computer. I know the governor lifted that 30-day emergency refill for prescription medication. So hopefully that's only if there's some kind of emergency situation, somebody needs things, and you've already kind of thought about medications and stuff.
Yeah, and speaking of emergency services, we're just learning emergency services have now been suspended on Matlacha and Pine Island. And this is crucial because we tell you, they mean it when they say if you don't evacuate, they cannot come and get you now because the weather is just too unsteady. So fire crews say any calls to 911 will be logged and then responded to once conditions allow. Usually that happens when the storm is long gone. They can assess how dangerous it is. Then they can go out and respond to those calls. It could take a while.
Yeah, it takes some time. Let's get back over to Taylor Petrus getting a new video. I believe, is this Golden Gate?
This is Golden Gate Estates. So viewer Tessa sent this in to us, and you see these large trees here. This video doesn't even do it justice. Those large trees are swaying in the wind down there in Golden Gate Estates, where we are seeing most of those wind gusts happening right now. And I'm getting videos and pictures from all over. I could continue to show you the conditions across Southwest Florida this morning.
All right, and let's now turn to reporter Liz Byro, who has been on Vanderbilt Beach. As we've been checking in, it hasn't been horrible out there yet. Liz, how is it for you right now?
Well, lately it's just been consistent wind and rain. I would say about 45 minutes ago was when the rain was at its worst. I mean, the street just looked like it was crawling. The rain was just sweeping across it, but it has just been consistent. Now, this side behind me, this is the Gulf, but on the other side of our hotel room, that is a lagoon, and the people living around the lagoon have their boats elevated above the water. Now, this has been able to give me a gauge of that water level. When you look at the distance between the bottom of their boats and the top of that water, it has just shortened over time, indicating to me that the water level is rising. Live in Collier County, Liz Byro, Wink News.
All right, Liz, thank you. Let's go out now to our Fort Myers Beach camera, and here you can see it is raining pretty heavily there. And if you look off closely in the distance, I know it's pretty dark, but you can see that heavy surf, and we expect this heavy surf to only get worse as the hours go on. And if we can now pull up our Punta Gorda camera, Fisherman's Village here, you can see the palm trees swing in the wind. Those ominous clouds continue to move. Yeah, look at the sky. And the boats there, you're going to start seeing those boats really start to sway back and forth because of the winds now that we're experiencing.
And also, let's do a little live tour. Naples Cam, Village on Venetian Bay. That's the other camera we have up working right now. And you see lots of raindrops, which is why you can't see a whole lot down there. Our Sanibel Causeway camera, we lost power about, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes ago. As you can see there, that's the frozen shot. And our reporter on Sanibel reporting power outages. So we're expecting more of that as the morning goes on.
Yeah, in fact, I'm looking at the outages here. Hundreds of customers on Sanibel Island still without power, so they were the first to lose power in a widespread manner. Nicole, what did you say? We have a Naples Pier camera, I believe, right now?
Let's go ahead and take that live real quick if we can. Look at that, lit up. You see the surf, not something we typically see in the Gulf, but very, very quiet there. It looks like a little bit of lighting up in the sky. That's what I thought too when I saw for a moment. We were just talking about power outages, and at some point, I know many of you have generators at home that you want to be using. And unfortunately, time and time again, we hear of more deaths from generators from carbon monoxide poisoning than we do actual storm. Let's get over to Taylor Petras, because now is the time, just like your preparation plan, to be running through how to operate that generator when the time comes.
Absolutely, Lindsay, Corey, and unfortunately, it's a lot of times after these powerful storms come through where we start to see injuries, casualties, because people are not using things properly. So we want to remind you, if you do have a generator, you do want to be careful when using it. So for example, do not run it in an enclosed space. If you can put it outside of your home on a lanai, out in the open, that is what you want to do. And when you do that, try to get at least 20 feet away from your house as well. Also, always direct the exhaust away from your home too. Again, simple mistakes from using generators after the storm is what we can see some of these casualties. So it's important, if you are using a generator, to remember these things.
All right, Taylor, thank you. I want to show you what all hands on deck looks like. This was posted on the Fort Myers Police Department Facebook page, and the acting chief saying that they were leading the evening briefing prior to the officers hitting the streets. This was posted Tuesday night. And look at all of those men and women in the bleachers at Fort Myers High School getting that briefing and ready to make sure our community stays safe. In Fort Myers, there are 2 shelters within city limits. That's Dunbar High and Treeline Elementary. Can we take the live look of downtown Fort Myers one more time so you can get a sense of what conditions are like there? If there's wind, that camera moves. So that's telling me not too windy, but a few raindrops, not looking horrible there right now.
And speaking of, Fort Myers police officers, you were saying it's all hands on deck.
Yeah.
I was talking to the chief of police in Cape Coral, and they also are spreading out their officers to strategic places across the city. They can't necessarily go out, but they do that so that they are ready the moment that it's safe for them to do that. So, it's police headquarters, different substations, maybe even their personal homes, so they're ready to go.
To that point, I want to show this because I think this should be a little bit of a comfort to you. If we can show this video from the National Guard stationing at Lehigh Acres Library. Do we have that available to show everyone if they're just joining us? There you see them. This was captured by our crews yesterday when we still had daylight hours. You see those high-profile vehicles. That is so they can go where many of our cars cannot. 5,000 Florida guardsmen and women are stationed, and they are ready to respond the moment they can. And they actually brought in 2,000 others from surrounding states. I believe they were Tennessee, Georgia, and North Carolina. And these men and women trained to do whatever they need to be. If that's knocking on doors and rescuing people, handing out waters and blankets. But hopefully if you're sitting at home and saying, oh man,
I feel so alone.
Yeah, that's a great point, Corey. I feel alone. I'm new. I just don't know what to do. You're not alone. They are going to be there the moment the streets are safe. And meteorologist Casey Sherman is going to be walking you through everything this morning. And I think, Casey, let's get back over to you with a good look from Wink Doppler 3X of Hurricane Ian right now.
Yeah, and you can clearly make out where that center is, where the eye is. The most dangerous part lies around this system, where we've seen some lightning firing up near the northern portion of the eye wall. That is a sign often of strengthening, which we have seen now, a strengthening system. As of the 5 a.m. update, this is now a Category 4 hurricane. That is what we were expecting the entire time. That's what the forecast had, was the strengthening to a Category 4 hurricane before it does make landfall. We've seen right now some heavy bands of rain tracking through particularly those areas that are along and west of I-75, at least at the moment. Where we currently are dealing with areas rather of heavy rain. Again, there's a distance, by the way, from Naples, about 70 miles to the south and west. Let's zoom in, though, to Wink Slide Doppler 3X, 3 times more powerful, where we currently have some light to moderate rain. We've seen some rainfall rates of around 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch an hour. So if you're, wondering, well, this doesn't seem too heavy because, man, in Southwest Florida, are we used to some heavy thunderstorms with heavy rain? We sometimes get rainfall rates of over 3-4 inches per hour. The thing is, and this is just generally speaking with tropical systems, they tend to not produce extremely heavy rain like our summertime storms. But as we see these same bands of rain move in spirals across the same area, that's what creates for that flooding threat, that freshwater flood threat, and that's where we see that water kind of steadily pile up here as far as at least the freshwater rainfall goes. Rainfall rates, you can see, ranging in some of our heaviest pockets, not much for Southwest Florida standards, 1/2 inch per hour or so, but you talk about 1/2 inch per hour for several hours, and that's where you get those high rainfall totals from tropical systems. Farther north, we have some of the heaviest rain on the map right now for Punta Gorda down through tropical Gulf Acres at the moment, and out through portions of the Cape Hayes Peninsula near Rotunda, up through, again, Punta Gorda along that stretch of US 41 and I-75. So Hurricane Ian, the 5 a.m. update, 140 mile per hour max sustained winds. We have seen strengthening. The wind field continues to expand as well. Again, all things we anticipated here. This is nothing new for us. We're going to continue to track these bands of rain moving in, winds picking up as we head towards especially sunrise and after, onward through what should be the windiest time frame for those northwestern zones. I would say between about 1 to 4 p.m. Likely going to see that landfall somewhere around now 2 o'clock is where the National Hurricane Center is projecting that to occur. We're still looking at this likely along Captiva or Sanibel. From there, we're expecting a track to the northeast through the Cape Hayes Peninsula, Port Charlotte, and then eventually up through areas like Mineral Springs, and then clipping portions of DeSoto County. We do happen to see this weekend as it pushes inland, and I will say, as we head into the remainder of tonight, 12 hours over that 12-hour span there from 2 p.m. this afternoon to 2 a.m., while the motion still is a little slow, it is faster at least than what we dealt with yesterday. It does look like it's sped up a tad than what we saw, which was stalled out a bit more yesterday. It's a little bit of a silver lining there. Unfortunately, though, this is still kind of a worst case scenario for us in Southwest Florida, which we have prepared for, thankfully. The good thing about hurricanes is we can watch them, we can track them. It's not like a tornado threat that you get in the plains, which I feel for those people out there where it's kind of a quick threat there where you don't really have much time to prepare for it. We've been preparing for this hurricane and we are ready. Consensus models, they've shifted just a tad to the north and west. That's likely why we've seen just a little bit of a nudge with that forecast track to the north and west, but not by a whole lot with the National Hurricane Center forecast. All right, so winds beginning to pick up. You may notice that. You may hear them if you're anywhere from inland zones to coastal areas. Our wind gusts clocking in, the last reported wind gusts in Lehigh Acres, clocking in at 50 miles per hour. We've seen some stronger gusts with these bands pushing through the area. Last reported wind gusts near Englewood near 40 miles per hour, 45 mile per hour wind gusts in Sanibel. We have had some reports of gusts of up to 60 miles per hour for areas like Marco Island. So timing out the winds, this takes us through about mid-morning. By that point in time, we will be dealing with hurricane force winds. This is 10 a.m. for those coastal zones at least. Those are winds that are above 74 miles per hour. So hurricane force winds for areas like Sanibel, Captiva, Pine Island at the moment. You can kind of make out where those are in this little pink ring here. As we head towards 1:30, 2 o'clock, Eyewall at that point in time will have the potential pushing on shore, and that could be featuring winds. This model might be underdoing it a bit, I will say. It could be featuring winds of up to and over 110, 115 miles per hour, especially when we're looking at a Category 4 hurricane making landfall. So windiest time for those northwestern zones where we are expecting that landfall, Charlotte, Lee County. We're talking about between about 1 o'clock through about 4 or 5 o'clock as that continues to move inland. From there, we see this lift farther off to the north. Still some breezy conditions, windy conditions as we head into what will be tonight. I think those winds will start to lighten up as we head into late tomorrow and into your Thursday evening is when we'll finally start to see some of those winds die down. And as those winds die down, at least our storm surge will start to lessen. But we still will have a bit of an onshore wind that's going to prevent at least that storm surge from receding and through the entire overnight time frame. So keep that in mind. Rainfall amounts for us, totals will be heaviest for those northwestern areas, DeSoto, Charlotte, Lee County, at least those coastal zones. We're predicting right now between about 4 to 7 inches with locally heavier amounts. This is the European model, and we'll say, and this is our in-house short-range model showing some heavier totals. So this is a possibility on the table here that we could see some areas picking up over a foot of rain in those areas that are farther off to the north and west. Englewood, think the Northport area, it's a possibility, but right now our forecast range is generally between about 4 to about 7, 8 inches with some locally heavier pockets. We're going to have much more in terms of radar updates and more updates on the wind gusts, the current conditions with Ian, and of course the forecast coming up. But right now I'm going to toss it over to Corey and Lindsay.
All right, Casey, thank you. And we are getting a question consistently and so we wanted to bring in Nash for just a moment from so many of you. Tornadoes are part of the threat. Mary Elizabeth wrote in and she said, can you tell us how to anticipate a tornado with the weather? Are there any indicators you guys are looking for on radar so that they can prepare?
Yeah, specifically in this scenario, that is a fantastic question because I used to live in Oklahoma for a long period of time. I know many people moved down here from out of state and they're used to these tornado warnings where you have 20, 30 minutes of lead time. It stays on the ground, it goes in a straight path, and it could grow very large. We're dealing with a slightly different situation. When it comes to tropical tornadoes, they're typically very short-lived. They spin up very quickly to the point where every scan counts on radar. We get them warnings issued for them as quickly as possible, although oftentimes that lead time is very small, if not sometimes behind with these particular warnings. It's very hard to identify these little spin-ups within a hurricane. So advice-wise for this, I would say go ahead and take those tornado precautions as this hurricane bears down on you. Make sure you are not near any windows that could get blown out. Put as many walls between you and the outside as possible. If we could pull up Weather 1, I'd love to show you this graphic here. It's a great indicator of where you should head in your house. Notice the hallway, a great option, stairs, a bathroom. Notice no windows in any of these rooms. We talked about earlier, a bicycle helmet might not be the worst idea, especially as that eye wall, for example, would be bearing down on you. But additionally, just being aware of your surroundings and making sure you're in a safe room to begin with, because unfortunately, if you don't have any way to receive those tornado warnings, they could spin up very quickly, and they wouldn't be much different than the eye wall of a hurricane bearing down on you anyways.
All right, Nash, thank you very much. We just got word, actually, that first responders, particularly in Lee County, have ceased operations. The fire department in Cape Coral also just suspended operations, basically meaning if you call 911, they are not going to be on the roads to come and save you in your emergency. And I believe we have some sound from the scanners of them telling people calling 911 that they cannot come get them.
All units and monitors on dispatch 3 due to current weather conditions. All responders have ceased response until further notice.
So again, what you are listening to is specifically Lee County. their emergency operations, how they communicate with the dispatch center and then all deputies, fire emergency personnel, and they are saying they are ceasing operations. So bottom line means Lee County, and I'd venture to say most of our counties are going to be experiencing this now, where they are not going to be responding if you call 911 because it's not safe for them to be out on the roads.
And the fire chief, in fact, in Cape Coral is just saying that they don't have ambulances either. So they're not going to be responding to any type of emergency right now, whether it's fire, police, or medical. So just keep that in mind as we go through the next hours.
Yeah, hopefully you took those precautions. We're all sheltering now, and we're going to get through it together. Let's get over to Taylor Petrus. We're already starting to see a little bit of flooding, and I'm guessing it's some of those low-lying areas, Taylor?
You're absolutely right, Lindsay. So these are in the Alva area, these next few pictures that I have. This first set is from Neil Baker. He says he is near the Franklin Lock. So, of course, near a waterway where we could have the potential to see that overflow. So this is a look near his home here. You see the water back here with the grass. Another view of it here coming up to his shed as well. Some other photos I was getting from Alva. This one from Scott on River Estates Lane, also in that area. Actually looks like I tweeted out the same photos, unfortunately. But we are getting a lot here. Continue to send in these pictures to us. We really do appreciate. Let us be our eyes and ears of what we are seeing. Some other things I have gotten. We know Marco Island is getting hit hard from the wind that is happening on down there. Another one outside a home showing the palm trees just whipping outside of homes here. The rain coming down as well in the background. You can it's rain just coming down. You can't really see through it. So the conditions there, we are keeping an eye on. We really appreciate everyone sending in your pictures and videos. Golden Gate Estates as well. I'm going to work on getting some new images into you right now.
And Taylor, I also noticed you were emailing with Lee County and the personnel there. You got a number saying 2,645 people in shelters there. That was their count last night. So thank you for reaching out and getting that latest information. We're giving you a live look right now at the village on Venetian Bay in Naples. It's a little hard to make out some of the high rises on the right because of the rain that's been falling, but it doesn't look like a lot of wind there at the point. Do you notice anything?
No, I don't. And, and that's what we've been kind of talking about, right? Is that you can get these large bursts of wind, you can get all of the rain, and then it'll stop for a little bit. Calm, and then it'll come back again. We have some video from Southwest Cape Coral off Beach Parkway. And this looks pretty familiar, right? If you're looking outside your windows, if you can see outside, you see the palm trees swaying in the wind. You see the wet roadways there. Not so much lightning we're seeing in Cape Coral right now, but again, that can change. And I do just want to warn, obviously, at this point, not safe to be going outside. I know you want to get the videos and the pictures, but if you can safely do it from inside or a covered porch, that's best. But you can see there in the swale, a lot of homes in Cape Coral are built up pretty high, especially the front yards, because they have well and septic. So they have this large slope down into the swale there. And a lot of times the water starts pooling, and when we get heavy rains, oftentimes those fill up pretty quickly. And you can see here off Beach Parkway, that is already happening because of all the rain.
And let's get a different look in Cape Coral. This is near Kismet Parkway and Santa Barbara. You see those palms. A lot of fronds will be down after this. In trees. We're already, I think it was Adriana Shepard who was in downtown Fort Myers and told us that she noticed some down trees on power lines, but they're just giving you the sense in the night sky of the wind blowing there.
And we do want to remind you that if your power goes out and you happen to have one of those radios that we've been telling you about, we are simulcasting to keep you safe. So you can listen to us on 96.9 Wink FM. And you can also listen to us on Wave 101.1. This is a great way to receive the latest information if your power goes out and you have a battery-powered radio.
And as we mentioned a few minutes ago, at this point, Lee County emergency personnel, they are not going to be responding to 911. And we are not driving home this point to scare anybody, but rather inform you, because we did, emergency personnel warned us, and we passed that message along that once conditions really get to where they are not safely out on the roads, they can't be out on the road safely, they have to wait until we get through this. I believe we have more audio that we can play for you, and this is what we call scanner. It's where dispatch is communicating with all deputies, different police departments, and emergency personnel working out on the streets.
All units on dispatch 3. Due to current weather conditions, all responders have ceased response until further notice.
And please know that does not mean they are not working right now. They are stationed in their emergency operations center,
Right.
and they are gathering information just like we are trying to gather information. And the moment that they can get out on these roads safely, they will do so. But they've got to be careful themselves.
Yeah, and typically, when the wind speeds sustained reach 40 miles an hour, that's just when it's not safe to be out on the roadway, period. And it's not safe to be driving over the bridges. I believe we have Weather Authority meteorologist Casey Sherman ready for another update here. Casey, anything you're noticing when it comes to what to expect over the next few hours?
I mean, definitely think that the storm surge threat is going to be the big time issue for us. This is what to expect. And notice it says forecast changes are possible at the top. We're now kind of nailing this down. This is what we are expecting. Yes, we could still see some wobbles. Even a mile would make some difference across our areas in terms of the forecast, but this is what we're preparing for. Rainfall amounts 4 to 8 inches on average. Isolated totals of a foot plus are going to be a possibility, especially when you're thinking of areas like Englewood, the northern portion of the Cape Hayes Peninsula, north of Rotunda, up through areas like Minnesota Key, Mineral Springs. Those areas are going to be likely closest to where some of that heaviest axis of rain is going to be. So that's where we're going to be looking at the greatest totals. I would say north, but really just north and west is going to see some of the heaviest there. Winds we're looking at across our coastal zones, we're looking at sustained 75 to 100 plus miles per hour. We could see some gusts with that eye wall, unfortunately, of a Category 4 hurricane working its way onshore. 125 mile per hour gusts or greater. Remember, the highest gusts, we're talking Charlotte County and Lee County, perhaps even into DeSoto County. If you're in Collier County, not going to be as high for those wind gusts. Inland areas, 40 to 70 mile per hour sustained winds. Gusts between about 75 to 95 miles per hour. And I would say the upper end of this range, again, that's going to be for those areas that are primarily north of the river, DeSoto County, northern Lee County. If you're in inland Collier County, you're going to be looking at the lower end of this wind gust range. Storm surge, we're talking about what should be about 4 to 7 feet for coastal Collier County. We still have that 8 to 12 foot storm surge for Lee in the Charlotte County coast. Of course, we'll continue to watch for some quick spin-up tornadoes, so that isolated tornado threat, it is always a possibility with any kind of landfalling system, along with widespread power outages. If you are riding out this storm, do those things to prepare for those power outages that are going to be inevitable across at least likely a good chunk of our area with these kind of winds forecast. So fill up your bathtub when you can for that water to refill toilet tanks, along with bathing. You can also take a bird bath with some of that water. I would turn down the air conditioning as much as you can. Try to make your home as cold as it can possibly be for that potential. When you do lose power, it'll at least be cool for a set amount of time here before it starts to warm back up, and also turn that refrigerator down to the lowest setting. All things you can prepare for possible power outages. Make sure you have those flashlights, and also make sure you also are charging your electronics, your phones. If you do have portable chargers, try to charge those up as well right now. Hurricane force wind probabilities, currently looking at what is in red, that probability in Lee, Charlotte, DeSoto, southern Sarasota County, that is the 70 percentile. So we have a high chance of seeing hurricane force winds in those areas. Those are winds of at least 74 miles per hour or greater. You can see again, it says northwestern zones that will be looking at the strongest wind potential. That drops off quite a bit as you travel inland. For areas like Naples, you're about that 30 to 40 percentile of seeing some hurricane force winds there. And again, those increase to about as we zoom in on this map, looks like about 90% for portions of Charlotte County, along with Captiva and also through southern Sarasota County. And this is thanks to the fact that we are expecting this wind field to expand, and it has continued to do so. We're looking at those hurricane winds about 70 miles wide, 275 miles wide for those tropical storm force winds in yellow. This is going to be a much bigger storm than Charlie. I know the track is fairly reminiscent of it, but it's going to be overall a bigger storm. In fact, the diameter of this storm already at about 30 miles wide, the entire hurricane force wind field of Charlie could fit within this. And we're looking at about a hurricane force wind field of about 70 miles wide. So Ian is going to be bigger than Charlie. That's why we always say, well, the track is reminiscent. Every storm is different. And with that, we will be feeling those different, at least magnitude of impacts, wind, erosion, storm surge, all going to be high. One of our biggest, I think, concerns with this is going to be storm surge, where unfortunately, as it makes landfall, which looks to be sometime between about 1 to 3 p.m., that's what the forecast is from the National Hurricane Center, it's also going to be close to around the time of high tide. So that means that forecast storm surge, which is between, for this area, 8 to 12 feet, which we do have storm surge, at least the high tide factored into that. We're going to be on the upper range of that storm surge, potentially. You can see those areas in red, and you can zoom into this map by going to the National Hurricane Center website and picking on your neighborhood. If you go scroll down to storm inundation map, we're looking at red for those portions along the Charlotte Harbor, up through the Peace River, the Myakka River, down through areas along the Caloosahatchee River's bank. Highest amount of storm surge there. For Sanibel, nearly all in that red 9-foot plus range. Matlacha, same thing with the high tide times. Close to when we should see landfall in the highest, the strongest push of water. As we travel down through Collier County, likely to see at least 9-foot storms, rather I would say 9-foot storm surge is a possibility, and over that for those areas like Everglades City and Chokoloskee. And of course, we're going to be dealing with the ongoing rain threat. We've been hearing that here in the studio with these rain bands that continue to move in. We will have more radar updates coming up in just a bit.
And Casey, I know it seems very lengthy to go through that storm surge map, but we were actually talking when we were off air a little bit earlier on. We live in very different places. Yeah. It's very helpful because every part of Southwest Florida is so different. And it just goes to show how much coastline we have.
It's so true. You know, I live, Cape Coral, you live down further south. I have many of you asking me, okay, well, I live in Naples, right. And our elevation is pretty high. How far does that storm surge go? Obviously, it's not 100% predictable, but the higher you are, obviously, the better. And, we're going to see, especially over the next probably 4 hours, the tide start to come in and that water starting to go up.
And I know the meteorologists are going to stay on top of that, and they'll pinpoint moment by moment, try to get down to your neighborhood so you get a good sense of what's going on, especially because most of you hopefully evacuated. And so you want to know what is happening at your home. Let's get out to anchor Annette Montgomery, who, if you're just joining us this morning, has kind of been all over. So Annette, you're live right now at a hotel in a safe place on Vanderbilt Beach, but you also were on Fort Myers Beach, so I don't know where you want to start, but kind of tell us what you've experienced the last 2 or 3 hours.
Okay, Lindsay, I can start. I was about to start, but this wind is picking up. I don't know if you all can hear it, but that's the same exact thing we experienced on Fort Myers Beach. So I'll just lead right into what we experienced on Fort Myers Beach. We went out there. The wind, it was really, really bad. We saw a lot of palms down, no trees, luckily, but we did see palms down. Now, on our way there, our car was hydroplaning. All of the gas stations we passed from Vanderbilt Beach to Fort Myers Beach were boarded up. We saw closed written on those boards. It was wooded boards on top of the windows, on top of the doors. All of the gas pumps did have gas bags on them. Now, one note I do want to make a point of is on our way back here, once we left Fort Myers Beach, we left there because our car was shaking. We just felt like it wasn't a safe place. That was Zone A, one of the first areas Lee County officials declared a mandatory evacuation order over. So we decided to listen to officials ourselves, and we pulled the plug and decided to move to Vanderbilt Beach, and that's where we're at right now. Now, what I can say, the major difference that I'm seeing is, even though it is windy here, and actually I'm going to have my photographer, Doug, can you pan to to this tree so they can see it's actually shaking. That tree is shaking right there. The wind, it's not as bad as Fort Myers Beach, but the wind is noticeable. I don't know if you all can hear it, but I can hear it. The wind is very, very bad. The Gulf is right there. So, of course, we're in another coastal place. As I said, my last hit, we moved from Zone A in one county to Zone A in another county. So this is another area that Lee County not Lee County, Collier County officials actually issued an evacuation order, a mandatory evacuation order for. Now I can show you kind of why they issued that. I'm going to have my photographer show you the roads. We're seeing some ponding, and I don't know if you all can see, the rain isn't coming down that hard. I know Liz Byro has been out here all morning, and she said at one point about 45 minutes ago to an hour ago it was coming down hard. So I'm assuming some of those ponds are from that, but definitely ponding in the roadway for sure. We haven't seen any cars since we've been here, no one on the road, so either people have evacuated or they're hunkering down, but obviously we can see why this is an area that officials wanted to evacuate first, because the wind, the water, the Gulf being right there, definitely an area that's susceptible to a lot of storm surge. So we are out here, we're monitoring the conditions. I definitely feel a lot safer here than I did in Fort Myers Beach. I do have an awning, I'm in the hotel as you said, so I feel a lot safer, a lot more comfortable, but we are watching the wind, we are watching some of these trees swaying, so definitely some concern here. I don't know if you all just saw that, that was lightning. So definitely we are seeing some inclement weather here, like you all said, across all of Southwest Florida. We're going to be experiencing some type of rain, some type of wind. So it's a little bit less in Fort Myers Beach, but it is picking up. I can definitely say since I've been here, the wind has picked up. Collier County leaders, of course, are doing all that they can. They say that they are monitoring this as well. I know certain commissioners are definitely paying close attention to not only this area in the county, but Marco Island, Isle of Capri, Porto Islands. Those are the areas that they know are susceptible to flooding whenever there's even a mild rainstorm. And obviously Hurricane Ian is anything but mild, as we've heard from Casey and Nash all morning. But we will stay here and update you. Liz Byro is also here. So we have two people here monitoring the weather, monitoring the conditions to bring you all updates online and on air. But we'll let you know if anything changes. For now, I would just say the wind is the biggest issue. We're not seeing too much rain. Like I said, there is some ponding, and you can actually see the wind is pushing that water in the street. But other than that, for now, I definitely would say it's pretty safer, or a little bit safer than it was on Fort Myers Beach, so I do feel a lot safer here. Live in Naples, Annette Montgomery, Wink News.
All right, Annette, thank you. I'm glad that you are a better spot than being out there on the coastline. I'm glad you're protected from the elements.
And not just a sliding glass door, because I was kind of curious what exactly are their digs, and they have a room and they walk through a hallway until they get out to that patio. So they've put a good barrier between them and where the outside conditions are. Let's go over to anchor Taylor Petrus, because we're trying to be your eyes everywhere. Where's this video from? It was just brought in, just taken recently, think?
It was, Lindsay. So this is a view from Babcock Ranch, which we have not seen yet. Let me play this for you here. They are more inland, as we know, but as you can see, still getting those impacts from Hurricane Ian as it makes its way closer to Southwest Florida. You see the rain on the roadways there, some wind on the trees here as well. So it doesn't matter where you live, you're likely seeing some impacts at this hour. We've seen it all the way up from Punta Gorda, all the way down to Marco Island. We have been getting tons of your pictures and photos, and we really do appreciate you sending this in. We are here in the studio. We don't have any windows in here. We can hear the rain coming down here near the downtown Fort Myers area, but this really helps us get a feel for what's going on out in the community. So again, if you are able to safely take any pictures or videos, feel free to send them in here to Wink News.
All right, Taylor, thank you. Let's take you out live outside here. This is at Fisherman's Village in Punta Gorda. And I can tell you, we've been watching this camera now for the past few hours. It has been pretty steady when it comes to the wind. These palm trees really getting a workout already. The wind is whipping there, and these clouds, very ominous looking. They're moving rather quickly. And you see the rain there, and then the boats and the slips swaying back and forth.
Overall speaking, I'd say probably calmer than what we saw maybe an hour or so ago.
Actually, yeah, you're right. And there you see some lightning. But yes, the wind looks calmer now. But again, don't let this fool you, because if you're at home and you're thinking, okay, it's a little bit better, I'm going to go outside, walk around, one of these bands could come up and drop a lot of rain and wind, even lightning.
Let's take you to Golden Gate Estates, where we have some videos showing you different kind of trees whipping there a little bit earlier this morning. The tall ones catching some of the breeze there and the gust there, and you can see again this taken in Golden Gate Estates a little bit earlier on. Are low-lying areas dealing with some flooding? I believe we have some pictures that came in from Alva. Do we have those pictures? There we go. And you can see there where this is the River Estates Lane and area there prone to flooding, but it looks like up on maybe a shed, already seeing some of that because of the rain that is continually falling down in that area.
Yeah, and you know, places like Alva, right? There's a lot of land out there, a lot of low-lying areas, county roads, and a lot of times, yes, they do flood when we see rain, and they're only going to see even more rainfall. I believe if we are ready to go to Weather Authority meteorologist Casey Sherman, looking at potential storm surge. And Casey, I think by far, this is the biggest concern on people's mind, especially if they live along the coastline.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what leads to the officials prompting those mandatory evacuations. And the storm surge is really something to be taken seriously. This is one of our most dangerous threats. Certainly, I would say not the number one dangerous threat with this particular system, where the kind of track that we're looking at and with the kind of winds that we're looking at with the system, unfortunately, we are going to be seeing some hefty amount of storm surge for some of our coastal areas. So this is a map, I will say, that highlights the reasonable worst case scenario. And the National Hurricane Center, they do have this on your website. I'm going to try to highlight some areas. We've got a lot of areas across the coast of Southwest Florida. So if you want to check this out by yourself, you can go to that website and then scroll down. There is a storm inundation little box that you can click on and literally zoom into any area. Again, though, this is reasonable worst case scenario. The National Hurricane Center really just uses this for emergency officials when they're making those calls as far as evacuation goes. So take this with the fact that it looks scary, but it is highlighting the reasonable worst case scenario. This accounts for about 90% of possibilities. It would only be, they put this out with the potential of only being exceeded about 10% of the time. So we're going to zoom in here, and this is why we had those mandatory evacuations for Charlotte County. Let's start at Port Charlotte here, and you can see that range at the top of the screen where we've got the yellow, the orange, and also the red. And this is showcasing those storm surge totals between 3 to 6 feet in yellow, 6 to 9 feet in orange, over 9 feet for those areas in red. Those are the areas that would be experiencing the most storm surge. So let's take you into Port Charlotte. You can see they're in that orange and yellow kind of shading, showcasing about 3 to 6 foot storm surge possibility, or 6 to even 9 in the orange. Out towards Meadow Park Elementary, this is the storm surge that you're looking at. We've got the orange, the red, some of those red areas showing storm surge potential of over 9 feet. And this is just overall what we're preparing for. Worst case scenario. Unfortunately, this system does pose that kind of worst case scenario threat here in Southwest Florida because of just the overall dynamics of the system. So those areas, that is the reason why they were asked to evacuate. We've got El Jabin here. You are looking at the orange, the red, that is 6 to 9 or over 9 foot storm surge. El Jabin up through areas like Harbor Lakes. Let's take you down into the Cape Hayes Peninsula. Highest storm surge is going to be for areas like Placida, down through those areas just south of Meadows and Villas. If you travel up through areas like Don Pedro Island, Cape Hayes, notice we're in the yellow, the orange, showing about 3 to 6 or 6 to 9 foot storm surge for those areas. Rotunda is the northern part. Pinehurst, Broadmoor, not looking bad. If you're south of that area, that's where you find in Pine Valley, Oakland Hills, the potential of seeing 3 to 6 foot storm surge. And we have that little ribbon here that's highlighting the potential to see some 9 foot storm surge in that area out towards the Cape Hayes Peninsula. So out towards Punta Gorda, we have some range between 6 to 9, over 9 feet. This is Fisherman's Village right here. We have Bayfront Health Hospital right there. And this is Charlotte High School right here. And down through this area is Punta Gorda Isles, where we're talking about 6 to 9 foot storm surge. And remember, I know I'm kind of glossing over a lot of these neighborhoods. If I'm not mentioning yours, please feel free to go to that National Hurricane Center website and find out where yours is. Charlotte Harbor Preserve, of course, in the red here along the Charlotte Harbor, over 9 feet with all that water pushing up against Charlotte Harbor. Charlotte Harbor, I think, is really going to be one of our problem areas for that storm surge threat. All right, traveling down through Lee County now. This is kind of the overview. You can see the highlighted areas. We've got the Caloosahatchee River, at least the banks. A lot of that highlighted in red along the Caloosahatchee River. That's why we also had a mandatory evacuation in those areas. We also see this highlighted for areas like Sanibel. We see this highlighted for areas along the perimeter of Pine Island and out through areas like Iona, down through Fort Myers Beach, Estero Bay, and really all the way down that coastline where we have that stretch of beach area. That's where we're looking at the highest storm surge forecast as we head into really beginning this afternoon and even into the overnight time frame with this potential storm. So zooming in here to some specific neighborhoods, here is Cypress Lake, here is FSW, here is Whiskey Creek, the orange, again, the red, 6 to 9 or over 9 foot storm surge. Here's Harlem Heights. Here's Summerlin Road for reference, where we also have Iona there, closer to the Caloosahatchee River. Hammond Stadium, if you're out towards that area, Old Hickory, you're okay. You're not looking at maybe some spots of about over a foot, 1 to 3 foot storm surge in some canal locations. Renaissance, I-75, notice you don't have that. Treeline Avenue, you're all right. It's going to be a wind threat, though, along with the potential to see, of course, that freshwater flooding, not so much storm surge for those inland areas. That's for those areas along and east of the I-75 corridor. All right, Lover's Key, Big Hickory Island. You can see in the red there as we travel to Bonita Springs. Here is Bonita Springs. And along with Bonita Springs Elementary, notice this area, if you live near Wisconsin Street or Pennsylvania Avenue, you have that red shading indicating that potential to see over 9 feet of storm surge. If you're down through areas like Bonita Springs Elementary, you have that range of 3 to 6, over 6 feet of storm surge. The area in blue here would indicate 1 to 3 foot storm surge. That's around Dean Street, areas like Matheson Avenue, and down through portions of Bonita Beach Road. Let me get that a little bit more centered here. We have more of the 1 to 3, 3 to 6 foot range and kind of pockets here. And this is what I'm talking about. It would be a good idea to look at this map if you do have time, because there's kind of a lot of pockets with these potentials. They've really gone through thoroughly with this map and highlighted the areas and really indicated point specifically what you could see. Reasonable worst case scenario in these areas. So traveling now down through, this is Collier County. Let's kind of zoom out and take an overview of Collier County. Immokalee, Ave Maria, you're fine. Biggest threat, wind and the potential for that freshwater flooding with the rain, and of course also isolated tornadoes. It's of course across the coastal areas. That makes sense with this water pushing on shore. Bonita Springs, Vanderbilt Beach, those coastal zones along the northern coast of Collier County. You currently have the red along with those southern zones in the red. We're talking about 10,000 Islands, Chokoloskee, areas like Everglades City. So zooming in here, we've got Barefoot Beach. Here is Wiggins Pass, Vanderbilt Beach. This is North Naples. This is Mediterra for reference. And this is Immokalee Road. Farther south, we've got Naples Airport here. East Naples, as we zoom into the downtown area of Naples. We've got 5th Avenue right here with the intersection of 8th Street right there. There's Park Street. There's 6th Street. And there's the Naples Pier. Aqualane Shores to follow as we travel down the Naples Bay. Naples Botanical Garden, 6 to 9 or over 9 feet of storm surge possible for that area. We've also got Isles of Collier Preserve over here, some spots that feature some storm surge. And traveling farther south, let's take a look at Marco Island. You currently have about 3 to 6 foot storm surge possible. We're looking at currently also Goodland, more towards that 9 foot range possible for some of those areas. 10,000 Islands, there it is, and also Everglades City. So that is kind of a rough breakdown of your storm surge map. Again, you can check that out in a little bit more detail from the National Hurricane Center website. Just keep in mind, the main threat, most dangerous threat from really any kind of tropical system tends to be the storm surge. It's the water threat that you can't run from here. So take this system seriously. We are going to be looking at some big time storm surge in some areas, especially I think up through areas like Charlotte Harbor. I think that is going to be one of our main areas of concern. I'm going to take more looks at our radar and also our wind threat with this system coming up soon.
All right, Casey, thank you very much. It is now 6 o'clock on this Wednesday morning. We know we had a long day ahead of us. Here you see Wink's live Doppler 3X behind us showing you just how large Hurricane Ian is. And if you're just joining us, Hurricane Ian is now a Category 4 storm. It increased in strength overnight, and the track really didn't change much. Our meteorologists expecting this to be a Southwest Florida hurricane.
And I know if you're waking up and you're hearing Category 4, it can be a little bit frightening. I think we both had a moment. Yeah. The news came down at 5 a.m. You know, deep breath here. We all prepared for this, and now it's time to sit tight safely wherever you are sheltering and get through this together. And as you just saw, Casey's here, Nash is here. I think I just saw Chief Meteorologist Matt Devitt wake up.
Yeah, he is definitely here watching things
He's ready,
too.
and he will be joining us in a little while. But let's start first trying to get some eyes across Southwest Florida. Our reporter, Claire Galt, is live on Sanibel Island, where we know there were power outages. There are power outages. Claire, you mentioned that your power went out in the hotel. How are conditions there right now?
Well, our power is still out in the hotel, but it's kind of interesting. I think I remember Corey mentioning this in the newscast a little bit earlier, that we could see periods of time where we'll see a ton of rain, a ton of wind, and then it can get kind of quiet. Well, it's a little bit interesting because right now, you remember just 30 minutes ago, the rain was heavy. It was bad. Right now, that rain it's almost stopped. It's quite shocking how fast things can really take a turn. The wind is still going. You can see the palm trees are swaying a little bit. The wind's getting them. The wind is strong. But if we come over here, just 45 minutes ago, my photographer Jack and I were sitting inside right there. These doors were slamming shut. I could feel wind and rain blowing on me. It was cold. It was chilly. And now things seem to have calmed down just a little bit. We'll see. But thankfully, I'm one of the only people in this hotel, but there are others. Earlier today, I met a family who came here all the way from Cape Coral. They told me that they evacuated Cape Coral because they were worried about flooding for their house. And they said they didn't really think the storm would be too much better here in Sanibel, but what they thought would be better is being in a hotel at that kind of elevated height.
I think it's going to hit just the same, but the elevation is definitely going to be better. Being higher up, you're not going to be scared to be flooded out of your house. So that was the biggest thing, especially with a family of 5.
Now, I do want to be your eyes and your ears as much as possible. So, Jack, if we can kind of walk over here quickly. I just want to show you again. You can see the wind, the trees blowing a little bit, but even in the pool there, you can see there's really not that many rain droplets. So, we'll play it by ear. We'll see how things keep going, and we'll hope for the best. Now, again, I wanted to bring up, we've been talking about how so many, first response agencies have kind of ceased operations. Well, Sanibel Fire and EMS is one of those. Last night, if you remember, at 10 p.m., they stopped answering calls. They stopped responding. So hopefully, you made the decision to evacuate. Hopefully you got out of there. But I just want to remind you that if you didn't decide to do that, if you stayed here, if you did not evacuate, then unfortunately you are on your own if you need help. Now, I will keep you updated. I'll let you know what happens. At this rate, we could be seeing a totally different thing the next time I touch base with you guys. So I'll keep you updated. Live in Sanibel, Claire Galt, Wink News.
All right, Claire, thank you, and stay safe out there. And while we do have reporters all over Southwest Florida for you this morning, we can't be everywhere. That's why we need you at home. If you can safely take any pictures of video of what you're seeing in your neighborhood, please send them in to us here at Wink News. I just got this new video from Marco Island showing how intense that wind is there right now. You see it just billowing into this palm tree here. They are seeing some of the strongest wind gusts at this hour, but we're also seeing conditions all the way up to Lee County, even as far as Charlotte County at this hour. This is from the River Hall community in Lee County. Again, another inland community, but they are starting to see that rain and wind pick up in their neighborhood as well. Thank you to Angie for sending that in to us. And I just got this picture showing some flooding. This is near the Lee Hendry County line. James Longmire just sent this in to us. You see the street light on here and you see the water starting to pool here at this intersection. So again, low-lying areas, you do not have to be in those evacuation zones to see the impacts from Hurricane Ian. We can still see that water, that flooding start to happen. So even our inland communities near Hendry County, they're going to start seeing these things. We're going to keep an eye on any more viewer pictures that come in. Again, we really appreciate you helping us out to get a sense of what's going on in Southwest Florida right now.
And Taylor, I think, and I was talking to Lindsay, I think a lot of things are starting to really amp up right now because a lot of you viewers are sending us pictures and videos. People in Cape Coral saying, wow, it's really starting to get rough out there. Let's take a live image now from our downtown Fort Myers sky cam. And it was pretty calm about an hour ago, but here you can see the wind shaking this camera. There you see it shaking on top of the tower. That just goes to show you the power of the wind now. And these bursts of wind can come really at any moment as the new bands start to make their way on shore.
And we are also just learning from our reporter, Annette Montgomery, who's been text messaging with the commissioner in Collier County, Marco Island, no power. They are out of power. That's what happened with the wind that we are seeing. I want to get over to meteorologist Nash Rhodes. Nash, before we talk wind, I had Paul just email me because Casey was breaking down that storm surge saying when. Paul didn't say where he lives, but I think before we get that storm surge, we got to deal with the wind, right?
Yes, and the wind is the thing that's going to consistently get stronger as that eye gets closer and closer to Southwest Florida. You'll also notice a pressure drop, especially down towards Collier and Lee counties, where you are the closest to that eye as it slowly traverses its way up the coastline. Here are the current sustained winds. One of the big reasons we're seeing a lot of reports out of Marco Island are because sustained winds there right now are 41 miles per hour. That's nearly double what most of our inland zones are for now. Punta Gorda at 33 miles per hour sustained as well, 31 in Englewood, even Port Charlotte ramping that wind speed up to 31 miles per hour also. Here's a look at wind gusts. These are temporary gusts of wind that can happen and are reported by our sensors in various counties and locations. 40 mile per hour wind gusts from Northport through Port Charlotte and Englewood, but we've been keeping a close eye on Marco Island in Naples as that center of circulation is just off the shore for now. 51 mile per hour wind gusts just recorded in Naples, Marco Island with a 62 mile per hour wind gust. Quick check in with Hurricane Ian. With the last advisory, we did bump it up to a Category 4 hurricane, at least as far as categories go. Sustained winds with 140 miles per hour. That pressure level dropping significantly from that previous advisory all the way down to 941 millibars. That is over a 10 millibar drop from advisory to advisory, completely indicating that we are undergoing rapid intensification with this storm, and we would likely expect it to be a little bit stronger, if not withstand its current strength over the next hour or so as it gets even closer to our shoreline. Hurricane Ian on satellite imagery still showing a prominent eye, but take a look at the burst of convection or thunderstorms there around the eye wall. This one getting awfully close to us here in Southwest Florida as landfall is still expected sometime into the early afternoon today. Sarasota County, Charlotte County, Lee County, all of you are within play for a possible landfall from this system, and at the moment it is a Category 4 hurricane. Here's a look at the Saffir-Simpson scale, which is what we use for hurricane ratings. At the moment, that Category 4 hurricane bumping it up from that 3, as we previously had 120 mile per hour sustained winds, now 130, bumping it up even into the middle tier of that Category 4 hurricane status, as we do expect it to approach land here shortly and potentially ramp up in intensity. Here's the reason why we say it could be getting just a pinch stronger. Winks Live Doppler 3X in Punta Gorda right now, you're seeing those heavy outer bands from Ian, but take a look at Ian's eye wall. A lot of lightning going on around the edge of it. In fact, in one spot in particular, we are getting numerous strikes. We have a complete eye wall circulation here as well. The eye wall in width and diameter is roughly 15 to 20 miles, somewhere within that frame, depending on where you freeze the frame. And as it slowly makes its way to the north and east, we will be watching the coastal communities in Lee County, Lee County, Collier County, and perhaps as far north as Charlotte County for the most significant impacts, as they will likely feel that storm surge and those damaging straight line wind gusts first. Downtown Fort Myers, you are getting pelted with heavy rain. We are hearing it at the station. Boca Grande, more rain working its way towards your area here soon. Sanibel and Captiva, you've already had wave after wave of these outer bands, and they're only going to get stronger from here. We do have a tornado watch encompassing all of South Florida, apart from Monroe County, but just about all of us still under this tornado watch, at least until 5 a.m. on Thursday. That's primarily for those quick tropical spin-up tornadoes that we can get on the outer bands of these systems. For now, that threat really takes a back seat to the threat of a hurricane now bearing down on Southwest Florida. Regardless, you need to be in the interior section of your home, away from windows, and in a place that puts as many barriers between you and the outside world moving forward.
Nash, thank you very much. And as we've been telling you now, if you are in a mandatory evacuated zone and you stayed, first responders cannot come to you. In fact, we were messaging with first responders this morning, specifically in Cape Coral, citywide. They are saying they are suspending their calls. So fire, EMS, police, they're not going to be on the roadways. And that is the liability, of course, if you stayed and hunkered down in an area where you were told to evacuate. But just know that they can only get to you until after the storm has passed.
And just to give you a sense, I believe we have a little snippet of when they are radioing and talking to each other from dispatch. Can we play that for a moment?
All units and monitors on dispatch 3 due to current weather conditions. All responders have ceased response until further notice.
And again, we play that not to scare you, but just to drive home the point, especially if you decided to stay in one of those evacuation zones, that they are not going to be able to come out to you until Ian clears our coast, and it's safe for them to do so simply because they can't put more people in jeopardy of getting hurt. You don't know what's in the road. You don't know how high the water is, if there's down power lines, trees, debris. Things could be flying around. So just be aware, again, that was coming from Lee County Emergency Management and the dispatch center there, notifying all units. Stay in place, and then when we're ready and it's clear, we can respond again.
And I guarantee you right now, you are probably hearing the wind and the rain outside. In fact, if we can take our Village on Venetian Bay camera first, I just want to give you a sense of what it's like around Southwest Florida. So this is in Naples. It looks decently calm right here. A lot of rain coming down. There is some flashes of lightning. There are some flashes of lightning in the distance every now and then. But I want to show you the difference here in Punta Gorda at Fisherman's Village. If we can take that camera, and there you see those low clouds moving very fast, the wind really whipping the palm trees, and the boats that are in the marina slips there just swaying back and forth. And again, more rain coming down there.
An area we don't have eyes on right now is Fort Myers Beach, simply because the conditions were not safe for our reporter to be there. So we sent her a little bit inland. But one of you just sent us in some video. So I'd like to get over to anchor Lisa Hudson. Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong. This is coming off of Fort Myers Beach, right? Where specifically?
It is. It is coming off of Fort Myers Beach. I'm not exactly sure on the exact location. They didn't say specifically where this was, but they did tell us this was Fort Myers Beach. Let me see if I can replay that.
I think Lisa, it's Estero Cove condominium.
Estero Cove. Okay, Estero Cove condominiums. So this is on the southern part of Fort Myers Beach. So really towards the end there, you can see again the wind whipping. It's kind of difficult to kind of see just how how Ian is impacting our area because it's so dark outside. Once the sun comes up, we'll be able to see these effects way more clearly, but you can clearly see the ponding in the parking lot, the wind blowing in the trees, water definitely coming up in that area.
And thank you to Heather Shabert who sent that in. That is an area that we know has dealt with flooding issues in the past, and they were working on the whole road to the island to try to get that mitigated and taken care of. But when you're facing the possibility of the storm surge that we are talking about there, it could be an unfortunate situation.
Yeah, and I think, there has been a lot of work recently for flood mitigation, specifically, in Estero, Bonita Springs, and even Imperial River. They've been trying to mitigate that. That floods very easily. Even in Cape Coral, Nicholas Parkway, Pine Island Road, they've been working on the drainage there, so this is going to be put to a test here. We're going to see how well the drainage system actually works in a major storm event as we're seeing this morning.
Yeah, let's show you some video that I find a little comforting, and that is from the National Guard. If we have this ready to go, our team was out in Lehigh Acres yesterday, and that's why it's daylight there. And you see that is Florida National Guard setting up shop at the library in Lehigh Acres with high-profile vehicles so they can get through flooded roads and get out to many of you. They do anything, whether that's go and rescue people from homes or if it's handing out water, blankets. They are trained in pretty much every kind of emergency response you can imagine. 7,000 different guards, men and women, are in Southwest Florida. 5,000 from our state. That was all activated by the governor ahead of time, making sure we were prepared, and they were stationed across our state. And then he also had 2,000 other guards, men and women, brought in from nearby states. So you will see them out in our community, and it will be a sigh of relief. Like you said earlier, just know we are not alone, not only from across the state, but surrounding states who know what our community is going through.
And if you stayed hunkered down, you may have that feeling of being alone. You're not seeing you on the roadways, you're not hearing anybody outside, but just know that personnel, police officers, National Guardsmen, they have been pre-staged to get to you as soon as they can. Let's get to Weather Authority meteorologist Casey Sherman now. Casey, we saw a little bit of a wobble in the track earlier, maybe even storms speeding up a little bit. What does it look like right now as far as this track?
The track is fairly reminiscent to Charlie. A lot of us, of course, remember that. And actually, Chief Meteorologist Matt Devitt, who is now in-house, just gave me a fun tidbit, an interesting tidbit, that the pressure is now the same as Hurricane Charlie for now Hurricane Ian. There's the track of Charlie. Here's the current forecast cone of Ian showing a similar track, but this is a different storm. We always tell you every storm is different, and this one, even though the track is fairly reminiscent, it is a much larger storm. The wind field is going to be much larger. In fact, the entire wind field, hurricane force wind field of Charlie, can currently fit in the eye right now, which is about 32 miles in diameter of Ian. Very powerful system. We are expecting this to grow in size as it continues to strengthen. We are showing some signs of lightning on both the northern and southern tier that could be additional signs of some more strengthening at this moment. We've been tracking some heavy bands of rain moving it across the area. We hear it here in the studio. The eye wall, which is the most powerful part of this hurricane, is packing the strongest of the winds. We also see some of the heaviest of the rain. That is currently about 54 miles to the south and west of where it is expected to make landfall, somewhere there close to the Cape Hayes Peninsula. And the National Hurricane Center, their latest 6 a.m. update, told me that it's moving at about 10 miles per hour. So if you factor in about the time of that, about 55 miles or so away from that eye wall making its way onshore, and it's moving at about 10 miles per hour, bearing that it doesn't have any kind of change in speed. We're looking at what could be the actual arrival of those eye wall winds within about the next 5.5 to 6 hours for those areas. It is right now about 6:19, so we're talking about close to about noon, 11:30 noon for some of those areas in Charlotte County. So I'm going to time this out for you right now. Wind gusts will be increasing as we head into Collier County. Actually, let's take a look at those current wind gusts at the moment. Take you back here. We are currently looking at those wind gusts at about 46 miles per hour Punta Gorda, 47 mile per hour wind gusts in Port Charlotte. We've got 50 mile per hour wind gusts now in Naples, 62 mile per hour wind gusts last reported in Marco Island, where you have some gusts between about 20 to 35 miles per hour for those inland zones. So winds certainly picking up as anticipated. We've been saying after about 6 a.m. we're really going to start to feel these. And as the system continues to head northward, here we go, right on time. As I said, within about the next 5.5 to 6 hours, we're looking at those hurricane force winds within that eye wall, reaching some of those areas of far western Lee and Charlotte County. That's where we could see some wind gusts of over 120, perhaps even over 130 miles per hour. Can't quite even rule out some gusts of up to about 140 miles per hour from that eye wall. This pushes onshore as we head through 1, 2, 3 p.m. This continues to track to the north and east, winds remaining strong and around Cape Coral, Punta Gorda, Port Charlotte of over 100 miles per hour through 3, 4, 5 p.m. before this eventually begins to pull off to the north and east. We will continue to deal with those extremely strong winds even as it does pull up to the north and east, but slowly beginning to kind of dissipate here as we head into tonight. These begin to weaken, and certainly by tomorrow morning, and really we should start to see those winds die down quite a bit by tomorrow evening is when we're going to see and feel these winds a much lighter. But the worst of this, it's going to come as we head towards really beginning at around noon today through 1, 2, 3 p.m. as that eye wall pushes onshore. Now the winds also, those create storm surge. So we're looking at a powerful Category 4 hurricane with the onshore wind, and this is what the progression of storm surge is going to look like. You look for the winds that are pushing onshore. So as we head throughout this morning, we're likely going to start to see that water beginning to be pushed up right now across our far southern zone of Collier County. It's likely beginning now for areas like Sanibel and at least on the eastern coast of the Cape Hayes Peninsula. As the system continues to move northward, we continue through 10:30, 11 a.m. with the strong winds up portions of southern Collier County. That's where we have a lot of those areas that, as I was showing you the storm surge map, highlighted in red for areas like Chokoloskee, Everglades City, expecting possible storm surge of over 9 feet in those areas, and that would be why all that water pushing in from the south, along with out towards areas like Iona, Fort Myers Beach, there's that onshore flow by 10:30, 11 a.m. and up through the Charlotte Harbor across the eastern portion of the Cape Hayes Peninsula. 2 p.m. we start to see a little bit of a shift, taking a bit more of a southwesterly component, and that's when we should begin to see some of that storm surge begin. The water levels rising a little bit in the Caloosahatchee River, 4, 5:30, and then on the western coast of Sanibel, Captiva, west coast of Pine Island, and then eventually that's when we'll also start to see that water begin to rise up the Peace River and the Myakka River in the Charlotte Harbor through areas like Port Charlotte, Punta Gorda, with that additional shift to the south and west. This is even through tonight as the system is lifted northward. Ongoing water level rises expected still for the Charlotte Harbor, down through areas like Pine Island Sound, and still ongoing for the Caloosahatchee River, where we will see some out through also then the coast of Collier County for areas like Vanderbilt Beach, Pelican Bay, down through about the Naples area. At that point in time, you're going to start to see by tonight that water beginning to push onshore, and we'll continue to see this even through the overnight time frame, some onshore flow component, but we'll start to see again those winds lighten up as the system exits beginning late tomorrow, which at least should allow for that storm surge to start slowing down and help those waters at least to slow down a touch. But it's going to be hard for them to recede with this onshore persistent flow. For more on what it currently looks like outside, speaking of with those winds, we've got some breezy conditions right now, Fisherman's Village. We're going to turn it over to meteorologist Nash Rhodes.
Yeah, breezy conditions in Fisherman's Village. Also seeing beginnings of storm surge, as you mentioned, both negative storm surge, and then eventually we will start to see storm surge on the southern side of this thing as it does pass by. I do want to show you one other factor that we will be seeing, and have already started seeing for many of our inland zones, it is the significant amount of rainfall on the outside of Ian, as Ian is a prolific producer of rain. Sky camera in Punta Gorda at Fisherman's Village showing some of those showers and storms continuing to track by as the outer bands of Ian push through the area. And those bands have carved some impressive 24-hour rainfall totals. You can tell these bands moved through just by the sheer shape and the thin nature of these rain indicators here. These are radar-derived products, so these numbers aren't verified. However, our radar is still estimating totals up to 7 to almost 8 inches of rainfall into interior and north sections of Hendry County. That's where we saw some of those more prolific cells track through the area. Additionally, out towards northeastern extreme corners of Hendry County towards the Lake Okeechobee waterfront, we've seen totals range between potentially 7 to 2 inches of rainfall locally. More rain is on the way, and we do have multiple models to actually estimate these rainfall totals here. The American model, which is one of our prolific forecasting models here as far as the tropics go, still showing between 5 to 6 inches of rainfall for the northwestern extent into sections of Sarasota and Charlotte counties. This is on top of the rainfall that we have already received. Additionally, we can flip over to the European model, which slows this down just a little bit. That leads to more rainfall totals, and you can certainly tell by the amount of rain that it's forecasting. Nearly 10 inches of rain out there towards both Charlotte into Sarasota counties. Again, a slightly worst case scenario here as far as rainfall totals go. Moving forward now to the sky camera in downtown Fort Myers, you're seeing this shaking back and forward. Those are the strong winds on the outer bands of this hurricane. Expect those wind speeds to only go upward from here, as wind gusts could exceed 100 miles per hour by this afternoon. And a quick check-in with wind gusts from when we last saw them with Casey. Still sticking with 50-mile-per-hour wind gusts in Sanibel, Englewood, Naples, and Marco Island. Areas inland still in the 40s. In fact, Port Charlotte joining the 50s, right at 50-mile-per-hour wind gusts in that latest update. Punta Gorda, Cape Coral, Bonita Springs, and many other locations now into the 40s with those wind gusts. We will continue to monitor this and see how those winds pick up as that eye approaches Collier County. We are still forecasting landfall, however, north of Collier County. And we'll have more information as it comes out on Hurricane Ian.
I want to show you some video that Nicholas sent us. Are you looking at your screen right there? Yeah, we'll play it again for you. Don't worry. He caught this on his Ring camera at 5:30 this morning. I hope it loops here. There's the big bear looking for a place to stay. Not the only ones out there trying to find shelter at this time. A place off Corkscrew Road in Estero, east of 75 in Ben Hill Griffin. I live down in this area. It's not totally unusual to see this, but just thought a moment to realize we're not the only people out there looking for shelter.
Yeah,
right
wildlife
now,
also in for a rough ride over the next few hours. We wanted to kind of recap what's happening right now. So what you're seeing behind us is Winks Live Doppler 3X. You see the large storm system, Hurricane Ian, now a Category 4 storm. As of this moment, in Lee County, emergency services have been suspended on Matlacha, Pine Island, places like Cape Coral. We're just getting word Lehigh Acres Fire Control also suspending emergency services. So what this means is if you call 911, it is now too dangerous for first responders to try and get to you. They can only respond to these calls once the storm is long gone and they deem that it's safe to get to you. So it feels a little scary at times, but that's just where we stand right now. It's just not safe to be on the roadways.
And in many instances, whether it was the sheriff's office, fire department, or police department, they station folks all over. So it's not like they have to come straight from the one center. They are spread out throughout their areas in safe spots, and that way they can respond quickly. In fact, I think we have an image showing 18, there you see them, Lee County EMS ambulances and 5 supervisor vehicles bunkering in for the night. This was taken Tuesday night. This is at the Civic Center. And simply so, once Ian passes, they can swap out for any trucks that encounter problems or have mechanical issues. And this will help those operations get back up and running as quickly as possible.
And I know a lot of you are waking up this morning. In fact, if you're watching the Facebook live stream on the Wink News Facebook page, a lot of you are saying, I'm wide awake. I can't sleep. I hear the wind. I hear the hard rain. We're told by our meteorologists that the worst of this is now expected to blow through from 1 to 2 to 3 p.m. today. So, you know, the conditions are starting to go downhill right now. You're hearing that wind. probably even hearing some things you may never even heard before in your home. But it is going to be quite the ride. We're going to be here with you every step of the way. And I feel comforted knowing that I know that people have been preparing. We've seen it. You know, the grocery stores have been full, gas stations have been full. We know when to take it seriously.
And let's take a full shot of Wink Doppler 3X so you can get a good sense. This tool really capturing the strength of Ian here. And, you know, as Corey's talking about preparations, right now is when I would really encourage you, and Casey and I believe Nash have been reiterating this too, to kind of run down that last minute, more so if you're going to lose power, because I know we are seeing power outages across Southwest Florida. So what does that look like? Well, first of all, make sure you have a way to stay informed. Corey mentioned there's a lot of folks joining the Facebook Live group. So whether that is logging online or through an app to get weather alerts, maybe a battery operated radio. We are simulcasting on Wave 101.1 as well as Wink 96.9. That way you can hear us through the radio if you need to go to an interior place in your home. Another option, pump up the volume on the TV, and that way you can stay safe in that interior place. That's the first thing you need to make sure you do. Also, now is a good time to check in with family and friends and make sure you've got that single point of contact ready to go so you can all communicate efficiently. Once this moves through, text message is the best way. I encourage you to maybe cool the house down a little bit. Casey mentioned put on that sweater if you need to.
Yeah.
And that way, if you do lose power, hopefully your home's already just a little bit cooler and it's not so uncomfortable as you are riding out this storm. Another good tip, to freeze some water bottles now. And that way you have something that serves as some ice to keep your frozen or refrigerated foods cool, and then it will melt and you'll eventually have some water too.
And let's talk about power outages, because we are at a point now. We are going to start seeing those widespread power outages. If we can actually go back to Wink Doppler 3X, the power outages are now starting to spread. Places like Matlacha, Pine Island, Sanibel Island. In fact, Chief Meteorologist Matt Devitt came over to us just a minute ago saying we are starting to see these widespread power outages. Now, if it's widespread, FPL and LCEC, they are going to know about it. In fact, FPL, I was talking to them when we were putting together the hurricane special. They have started to harden the grid, put in these smart meters so they know exactly where the power outages are happening. And we know that they have been staging linemen all throughout the state and especially here in Southwest Florida. So when it's safe, they're going to start with those high transmission lines, the critical infrastructure, police departments, grocery stores, hospitals first, and then they're going to start branching out into the transmission lines into the neighborhoods. But they tell me that if it's widespread, they are going to know about it by their automated system.
And let's actually get over to Lisa Hudson, because I believe you have one of those outage maps up. If we can pull up a live touch behind her there. Lisa, I know one of our commissioners was texting with a reporter on Marco Island saying lights flickered on and off and on and off, and I think that's going to be the case for a lot of people. How's that map looking?
Yeah, you could definitely see we are experiencing those outages. We can actually go county by county here on this particular map, and it will tell you the outages of all the providers. We were showing you before the FPL maps, the LCEC maps, but this map takes into account all the different providers. So this one here in Sarasota, they have about 9,000 customers out there. Let me see if we can bring that back. Let's see. These maps can get kind of tricky. I'm going to send it back over to you guys, and we will show you those outages here in just a moment.
Okay. Yeah, Lisa, thank you. We appreciate that. We'll let you regroup and get that together. Let's actually go to Weather Authority meteorologist Casey Sherman with a new update on what she is seeing weather-wise. And when it comes to the strength of this storm, Casey, that eye is staying very well defined.
It is, and what you can also notice on both sides of this, on the north side and on the south side, we have lightning, and that, unfortunately, it's a sign of strengthening. We may have a strengthening system up to landfall. Now, I want to look at some of the rain that we do have across the area right now. It has been coming in some heavier bands as we travel up through DeSoto County. Right now, for those areas along and just the west of US 17, we also have some heavier rain currently in areas like Port Charlotte, Punta Gorda. Look how fast these bands are moving. I will say we're talking about rainfall rates within these where you see the red. about a half an inch to an inch per hour. It's heavy, but we sometimes experience a whole lot heavier here from our afternoon thunderstorms. But you keep in mind when you're talking about a half an inch to an inch per hour, and we have this ongoing for several hours, that's what leads to the heavy rain that we get with these tropical systems, where right now we're forecasting between 4 to 8, even up to about a foot of rain, and I will have those rainfall projections in just a bit. Northport, though, currently some heavier rain passing through the Charlotte Harbor, Cape Hayes Peninsula. You now have some heavier rain moving through Rotunda. Boca Grande, you've got some heavy rain on the way right now, along with the Pine Island area, a bit lighter as you travel farther south down the island. Sanibel, you also are tracking and looking at some of those heavier bands now beginning to rotate into the area and on into Captiva and down through areas like Cape Coral. A bit lighter there for Southwest Florida International Airport, but still some steady rain nevertheless. We have some heavier pockets right now moving through Naples, down through Lely Resort, and even down through portions of Marco Island and Bonita Springs there. You can see a little bit of a heavier pocket. And we even have some additional heavy bands down through areas like Everglades City, 10,000 Islands across the area. Drier though as you travel inland, while we do have some heavy rain for Buckhead Ridge, Moorhaven, you're at least in a dry pocket there, along with Clewiston, a bit drier. So it's some at least dry time is always a good thing. Rainfall totals, this is the European model. This is total for really this event. We're talking about for those inland zones, I would say between about 2, 3, 4, maybe up to 5 inches of rain. It's those northwestern areas that'll have the heavier potential, as they'll be closer to that center axis, that heavier axis of rain, where you could see over 8 inches. We've had some models showing over a foot of rain in some of those particular locations. Now for the winds, and I want to focus in, I've seen a lot of Facebook messages. What about DeSoto County, Glades County, Hendrick County? For those people that do live in those areas, I want to focus and highlight in on those areas right now. These are what your wind gusts are going to be looking at one of the windiest times from this storm system. We're talking about gusts between 60 to 70, perhaps closer to the 80-mile-per-hour threshold for areas like Lehigh Acres. If you live in Clewiston, LaBelle, we're talking about 45 to 60-mile-per-hour winds. The strongest winds, they're going to be in areas of Charlotte County, Lee County, Englewood, Port Charlotte, Punta Gorda, Cape Coral, Sanibel, Captiva, and even Arcadia. We can't rule out seeing some gusts closer to 100 miles per hour for that area, as you may get very close to that eye wall as it begins that inland track. This is about 4 o'clock. We continue to see those winds gusting of over 120. I wouldn't rule out 140 mile per hour wind gusts as this eye wall pushes on shore. The time frame of that looks to be between about 1 to 2, perhaps as late as 3 p.m. It's looking bottom line like sometime that's going to be just after about noon today that we're really going to see those winds crank. The strongest of the winds with this system. We'll start to see it depart as we head towards about 7, 8 p.m. this evening, and from there we start to at least see those winds gusts lighten up, but they'll still remain pretty hefty here as we head through the overnight time frame. It's by about Thursday evening that we'll really start to see those winds at least wind down across the area, keeping it pretty windy still even as we head throughout the day for your Thursday. So Ian, it's a growing system, similar track to Charlie, but it is going to be a much larger system, which is why those winds, the wind field is going to be felt much outside, more outside the center than Charlie. And we'll have much more still on Ian coming up, but I am going to toss it back over to Lindsay and Corey.
All right, Casey, thank you for keeping a close eye on that. We want to show you kind of across Southwest Florida what everyone's dealing with. So first we're going to head to Fort Myers Beach. This is on the southern part of the island there at Estero Cove condominiums. You see a little bit of the wind blowing there, and it looks like some ponding in the parking lot from the rain that's been falling. Again, that's on the southern point of Fort Myers Beach.
And let's get to another video here. Winds from northwest Cape Coral. This is right off Burnt Store Road, and gusts of up to 29 miles per hour have been detected here. I believe this is from viewer Brian Freeman. This area of Cape Coral is very close to the water here, so they're going to start seeing very high wind gusts the closer Ian moves to the Cape Coral shoreline. Doesn't look like much ponding or flooding in the roadways, but you can definitely see the wind start to pick up.
And then let's get you down to Collier County, where you are getting a look at the wind blowing some palm trees there. This is right at Pine Ridge Road and Livingston. This viewer sent a video in, I believe, in the last 30 minutes or so. But you see again, wind just picking up trees. At that time, they were not dealing with any rain there.
All right, let's get over to Weather Authority meteorologist Nash Rhodes, if we can. He has a crucial update that he just learned about Hurricane Ian. Nash, it's strengthening even more.
Yeah, we expected rapid intensification. It's just rapidly intensified very quickly. We saw all that lightning around the center, and as of the latest advisory at 6:35 a.m., they have now found sustained winds of 155 miles per hour and a pressure level of 936 millibars. To put that in perspective, as we play this forward here on the Saffir-Simpson scale, we are now 2 miles per hour shy of achieving Category 5 status here with Ian. Definitely a dangerous storm, almost all the way high on our category scale. So please be advised to be careful with this storm as it is approaching land here by this afternoon.
All right, Nash, thank you with that update. Again, like we've been reiterating, though, our team has been stressing. They expected this to intensify. Still at a Category 4 right now, but I think we need to focus at home as you're sheltering that you have prepared for this. Take a deep breath. If it does upgrade it, I know it's just shy of that. What you do doesn't change at this point. Right. You shelter in place. You stay in a safe place in your home. What does that look like? Where there are no windows. Hopefully you can't see out at this point. You've got the shutters up, but then find that most interior part of your home. Casey mentioned earlier, maybe near plumbing, because that kind of helps with the structure, and just stay there. Hunker down with your family and be prepared. It's going to be a long day for our community as we are going to be dealing with Ian as it moves up our coast.
And I know we're such a strong community, such a tight-knit community. We're going to get through this. I think we all just take a deep breath. If you are staying put, if you decided not to leave, if you're not in a mandatory evacuation zone, like Lindsay said, it's going to be a rough day for us, but we're going to be with you every step of the way. What you're taking a look at behind us now is the latest scans of Hurricane Ian on live Doppler 3X. If we can take that full, just to give you a sense of where this storm is located, it is very close to our coastline here. And this is why you're going to start feeling those winds really start to pick up, some lightning perhaps, and then definitely the rainfall with these bands.
And here in the studios, and we're along the Caloosahatchee in downtown Fort Myers, we feel the same thing, and our meteorologists have reiterated this. Rain coming down right now as you get a band, you feel the wind, and then maybe it calms down. But that's by no means the end of it. It's going to come around again. And let's actually go live to downtown Fort Myers from our sky cam there so we can see what we're experiencing there. And you see it does look like a little bit of rain on the lens there. Camera not shaking at all. And sometimes in our windstorms we see that. But you know what? Let's go to Fisherman's Village in Punta Gorda, because the wind there, that's actually a village on Venetian Bay. There we go. Fisherman's Village in Punta Gorda, and that's picked up since the last time we checked in on this live camera. We might see occasional wind blowing on this camera, especially in the early morning hours when we're joining you normally, but this is definitely stronger than we've seen in the last hour or so.
Yeah, I'd say so. And in Key West, they have been getting battered as well for hours and hours. I believe we have some video from the Keys, water rising now because of the high tide. That paired together with the main concern, and the Key West person here is showing high water. Look at this, in a home. And you see, I know it's dark, but you can see how high the water is getting. Now, in the lower Keys, a storm surge warning was in place hours after a tide in Key West started rising, and the water was recorded about 2.5 feet above normal. It's safe to say, though, the water levels here in the Keys is only going to keep rising as that storm, Hurricane Ian, is right off the coast.
And do we have the southernmost point with the buoy there, that live camera we can still take and get in a check right now what it looks like there in Key West? Dark. And look, you can see the white caps there. Earlier this morning, very early this morning, I guess I should say almost overnight, we were seeing the white caps kind of crashing along there. Appears to be not the case right now. At one point, they were kind of covering the red concrete buoy there as they were dealing with the brunt of all of that. But again, that's the southernmost point, that iconic buoy everyone goes to take a picture of, getting a live picture there right now.
And if we can, let's get to Weather Authority meteorologist Casey Sherman, who is analyzing here Wink Doppler 3X. Casey, this storm, the eye, is so well defined. Are you noticing anything changing with it as the hour goes on?
We've certainly noticed some strengthening, and that is the latest from the National Hurricane Center. I'm going to get you to that track where we've had an intermediate advisory that just came out, 6:35, and they're going to start to do this. Hurricane hunters in the National Hurricane Center update this more frequently as it approaches land. It is a strengthening system still, Category 4, a strong Category 4 with 155 mile per hour winds. That's only a couple miles per hour shy of Category 5 strength. The pressure continues to drop, now 936 millibars. It's moving to the north-northeast at 10 miles per hour, where we're going to continue to see that track continue. This does eventually take it into a track that is fairly reminiscent of Hurricane Charlie. But I will say the pressure from that latest update, it is officially lower than Hurricane Charlie. That in response leads to those stronger winds, which we have seen from this previous update, from the update that just came out rather, where those winds are now at 155 miles per hour. So track similar, very different storm still. This is going to be a bigger storm in terms of size. Also right now with that pressure down, it is officially a stronger storm than Hurricane Charlie as it continues this track off to the north and east. This is a closer look still into that forecast cone where we are expecting a landfall sometime around about 2 o'clock or so as we head into this afternoon, 2 p.m. for those areas close to about Captiva up through the Cape Hayes Peninsula. That is the red center line, but again, we still have the possibility of having it be within that cone. Any little wobble here with this current system could lead to a track that's a little bit farther off to the north if we see a little bit more of a wobble to the west, or a little bit farther off to the south. But either way you cut it, this is going to be bringing some significant impacts to Southwest Florida, which is why we've been saying you need to take this system seriously. We're dealing with the rain. We're starting to feel those winds pick up right now. Here's a look at that center of circulation. Here is the eye, where you can see that lightning that's been developing around it. It's a sign of strengthening. We've got some very warm water in the Gulf of Mexico. If you've been in that recently in any of our beach areas, you feel that. It feels like bath water. That's what the system it is currently feeding off of, but we prepared for this. Hurricanes, the good thing is about them, we have a lot of time to watch them. A lot of us have completely prepared. We've stocked up with the water. We are stocked up with food. You have at least hopefully some supplies for those power outages that we've been telling you about that are inevitable at this point in time. We have prepared for a significant system here across Southwest Florida. It is going to be time, though, that we're really just heading into the time that all of us need to be sheltered in place. But for the next about 12 hours, I would say really for the next about 6 hours here, we're really going to start to see some of the impacts get much worse. And then we'll continue to see those impacts continue at a high magnitude, especially for northern areas as we head into this evening. So here's a current look at that projected forecast track. We keep a pretty close eye on the motion of the center. Again, any little shift off to the west here would be a little bit of a help to us as it continues this northerly track. Looks a bit of a new north track, but we'll see. Maybe it is turning this could just be a brief shift here. You can see all those wobbles that we've had there in the yellow line. Still forecast this, though, again, regardless, even if we see a little bit of wobble, to see a significant impact here across our area. There is the eye. Here is the eye wall packing the strongest of the winds, and that is about 48 or so miles south of where around that projected landfall may be. So we're talking about a system that's moving 10 miles per hour to the north-northeast. About a 50 mile per hour difference with distance. We're We're talking about that eye wall potentially arriving in some of those areas within about 5 hours. Time now is right now, it's about 6, just before 7 o'clock. So we're talking about those potential impacts arriving by as early as the eye wall winds arriving around that lunchtime hour. So that's what we're going to continue to prepare for here as we continue to see what's right now just some gusty winds and also rainfall. I want to take a look at some of those current wind gusts that we do have across the area. Currently, we are seeing these really pick up across the region. We've got now 55-mile-per-hour wind gusts for Marco Island. We've got 56-mile-per-hour wind gusts for Sanibel. We now have 47-mile-per-hour wind gusts, Cape Coral, Bonita Springs. As the system lifts northward, we're going to continue to see those winds increase across the area quite a bit. And of course, that eye wall, as it pushes on shore, that's what's going to be bringing those winds up to 100, 120, perhaps even as strong and up to over 140 miles per hour. So that's what we're preparing for within about the next 5 to 6 hours. For these areas, you're going to hear it if you stayed in those locations. It's going to sound very loud. You're going to then eventually see if you're in that eye where nothing's happening, those winds calm down quick, and then they're going to pick up again, but from a different direction. So make sure if this is your first hurricane and you have not experienced an eye, do not go outside in the eye. It's going to be just eerily quiet. But those winds pick up on the second side of that eye wall pretty quickly, and that knocks things around as it's out of that different direction. That's what can definitely lead to some serious injuries. Storm surge, of course, we'll continue to see that threat increase as this moves up the coast, at least parallel to the coast. We're talking about that especially increasing as we head what will be throughout late this morning into this afternoon and continuing through the overnight time frame. I'm going to shift it back to Corey and Lindsay right now.
All right, Casey, thank you. I just want to get this in really quickly. Comcast actually sent us an email saying they have opened up all of their Xfinity Wi-Fi hotspots throughout Southwest Florida to help keep people connected. This is going to be free to use. But if you are knocked offline, if you don't have television and your power goes out, if there is a Wi-Fi hotspot somewhere where you are, perhaps you can log on to that and then watch our live stream from the Wink News Facebook page or from winknews.com. But Comcast allowing you to connect to their Wi-Fi for free.
Let's check in with one of our reporters who's been stationed down in Collier County off of Vanderbilt Beach. That's where we find Liz Byro. She's been with us since about midnight now. And Liz, how are conditions there currently?
Well, the wind has really just picked up. I mean, since I just came outside about 5 minutes ago, and as Casey was saying, 50-mile-per-hour wind gusts, you can just hear the howling. Now, two interesting things did just happen in the last couple of minutes. The first one, we heard thunder, and I didn't realize that we had not heard of thunder since midnight until it happened. Another thing that just happened about 2 minutes ago, the lights did flicker on and off. Now, we know from about an hour ago, Annette Montgomery found out that Marco Island did lose power for a little bit. Our lights are now flickering. I'm definitely going to head back inside after this to make sure that everything I have is charged, and I recommend you guys at home do that too. Make sure your phones are charged. And county commissioners have already said this is an area prone to flooding, so now is really a time just to hunker down. Again, the wind is howling, the rain is coming down, the conditions have stayed pretty consistent. In Naples, Liz Byro, Wink News.
All right, Liz, stay safe out there. Let's go ahead and take a look. Naples Pier is where you're looking right now. They're live, and that is not a sight we're used to seeing with the Gulf, where you see the surf. And just moments ago, you noticed the sky lit up, lightning there. Doesn't look like, though, it's raining there currently. We have some news we want to share with you. The Turner Center is open for a shelter for residents. We are hearing, though, that it's very cold there, so they are asking that you please bring blankets, and that way you stay warm there. And I'm speaking about DeSoto County. I just wanted to make sure I had the right location. So Turner Center is open for anyone in DeSoto County who is trying to find a safe place right now. Again, very cold, so please bring a blanket. Also bring food and drinks for your family. They want you to know that pets are allowed, but they do need to be in crates.
And let's get back now to the power outages. We've warned you that we are going to see power outages as Hurricane Ian approaches Southwest Florida. We have on the phone Karen Ryan from LCEC. Karen, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us. So can you just give us an overview of what it's like for your particular LCEC customers and power outages?
For right now, we are seeing some outages, as you mentioned, on Marco Island. The whole island is not out, but they are getting some high winds. So there's about 4,000 customers out there. And then also on Sanibel, we have about 3,500 customers out. And I was listening to you this morning, and everything you said is so true that right now our crews are still out there, if it's safe to work, restoring power. But once we have widespread outages, there's no need for customers to call in. We know they're out of power, and we'll be assessing the damage as soon as it's safe to be out there, and then we'll start restoration right after that.
And Karen, this is a question we get all the time. I know you get that, and I know there's no clear-cut answer here, but it's when will the power be back on? So can you just walk, especially because we have so many folks who are new to this area, kind of what that process looks like for your team?
That is a great question, and it is always the one that we hear the most, and sometimes we hear it for weeks. Hopefully not this time. What happens is after the damage is assessed, then we will send crews throughout our 6 county service territory, and they will restore the main circuits first. That will get hospitals back on, grocery stores, law enforcement agencies, so that customers can start getting back to normal, at least with some of their repairs that they need to make. Once those main circuits are restored, then we will start targeting the areas that have the largest amount of customers that we can restore the quickest. So an example of that is if we have assessed an area that does not have a lot of damage and we can send crews there and restore 2,000 customers, that's an area that we'll go to first. If there's an area that has a lot of trees down, poles down, that's going to take a little more resources, and that will be after we restore the easy restorations, which I say easy, but it's never easy. After, especially with a hurricane of this magnitude. But once the large customers are restored, then we will go and target where there are customers, 1 or 2 customers that are out. So those will be the customers that will have that question: when am I getting my power back?
Yeah. And you know, Karen, when we were working with LCEC for our hurricane special, we talked about the supply chain issues going through the pandemic, preparing for a storm like this. You guys at LCEC started hoarding basically different things like transformers and power lines to make sure that you have what you need to respond. Do you feel in good enough shape that you have what you need to respond?
We are glad that we did that, Corey. We looked at our data from Hurricane Charlie and also Irma and the materials that we needed. So we started putting them to the side in case we had a storm like this. We feel like we are in good shape now. You don't know what kind of damage is going to happen with this hurricane, but the good thing is we're a cooperative and all utilities stick together, but there is a strong network of electric cooperatives. And so if there's some materials that we don't have, our partners, throughout the country will come help and come to our mutual aid.
Karen, for folks who are listening, we are telling them power outages are inevitable with the size and strength of this kind of storm. I've been recommending, drop that thermostat a little bit so it's a little bit cooler in your home. Maybe fill up that bottle of water so you have some frozen stuff in the refrigerator. But if there are people listening, they do not have a generator, what tips am I missing to try to make out riding this storm as comfortable as possible, assuming you will lose power?
One of the good things is, turn to your neighbors. If you have family members or friends that do have power, reach out to people that that don't have power and help them out. Patience is probably going to be the number one thing. Is just to be patient. Is that all utilities will get to everybody eventually, and there is a good plan. If they don't see trucks in their neighborhood, it doesn't mean that we're not there. But I would say you're very, very wise to talk about the fill water bottles and put them in the freezer, and that will keep food as cool as it can be until your power is restored. but that only lasts for so long.
Yeah.
So reach out. And also, if you have families in other areas, I mean, everybody has to get their homes back in order, but safety is going to be the best thing, because if there is flooding, that is not when you want to turn the electricity back on. You want to make sure that you have your house inspected, the electric system inspected before you turn the power back on.
Well, Karen Ryan from LCEC, thank you very much for joining us live on the phone. You know, the crews, the linemen and women that go out after a storm, they are the heroes in these situations because they are leaving their families and they are working nonstop until the power gets back on. So, Karen, thanks for joining us again. We appreciate it.
Just a testament, I think, too, Corey, that we cannot function without connectivity in today's world, right? No. We are taking you live right now. Is this Diamond Head on Fort Myers Beach that we are looking at, starting to see a little bit of daylight, so we're getting a better sense of those conditions. It's so hard in these overnight hours to really understand what the situation is. No rain there on Fort Myers Beach at Diamond Head, but you definitely see that wind and the surf from the Gulf there out in the distance a little bit.
Actually, and I believe we have Chief Meteorologist Matt Devitt ready to go in the studio. He's working on the weather graphics right now. Here's a look at the Naples Pier, Matt. And what do you take when you look at these live shots around Southwest Florida? What do you expect to happen now as the hours go on?
I expect this to be a historic day across Southwest Florida for all the wrong reasons. This is going to be one of the strongest storms that we have ever seen in recent times for our area. The latest update since last night, when it was a 120 Category 3, it is now a 155 Category 4. Category 5 strength is 157 and above. It is almost a Category 5. And it is approaching one of our worst case scenario landfall locations between Englewood and Sanibel Island. In reality, this is as real as it gets. So I cannot stress enough the seriousness of this situation with 155 mile per hour wind force when we hit this afternoon and this evening when it comes to the tide levels. Now at this time, it's not time to panic. And what we will do is we will be with you every step of the way. We're not going anywhere. So there are going to be no surprises. Every element of this storm you will know. And let's highlight at the moment what is going on and where we are at with this storm. We are seeing the outer bands. We had the multiple tornado warnings that were issued last night. We have them currently around the East Coast. But the main event is right here. And that is where we will see tornado-like winds of over 100 miles an hour for coastal Lee, coastal Charlotte, and all the way into Sarasota County. Even DeSoto County will see wind gusts over 100 miles an hour. So when that occurs, and we will tell you when that happens, we treat it like a tornado, as we will see those tornado-like winds. Now, when that moment comes, we will let you know, but it is approaching the coastline. And it will happen. It is inevitable. It will happen. There are not going to be any more surprises. This is going to be our storm. And that has been the track ever since yesterday. And as we put a loop onto this radar imagery, you'll notice that it is heading in the general location of a potential landfall from Englewood and all the way towards Sanibel, primarily as we hit this afternoon. That is when the tide levels will be forced up. Our worst case scenario when it comes to a hurricane is a landfall from Englewood to Sanibel. Not only is that going to be happening later today, it's going to be happening as a Category 4, almost borderline 5 storm. That is the current status as of right now. The pressures are lowering, and let's go back to the pressures that have right now lowered to about 900, and you're going to see it pop up, 937 millibars. That is stronger than Charlie. And the other difference here is that Ian is a bigger storm, bigger wind field, bigger scope of those that will be impacted by this storm. So if you have not done so already, I just cannot stress this enough. For your life and for the people that you love, if you are listening to me around Boca Grande, Captiva, Sanibel, if you have said, hey, this is going to be like every other storm, I've been fine, this is going to be no big deal. This is not going to be like those storms. There's no exaggeration here. Literally, your life is at stake here if you stay around Sanibel, Captiva, and Boca Grande. Doesn't get any more serious than that. This is one of the strongest storms that we have ever seen in Southwest Florida in recent memory. 155, Category 4. Please, I beg you, take this seriously. And it could continue to intensify. The pressure last night was about 954 millibars. Now it is at 937 millibars, and it hasn't capped yet. It could continue to lower, and it's not impossible that this develops into a Category 5 right off of our coastline. Now, I'm hoping, praying that it stops intensifying for the sake of our community and for the sake of Southwest Florida. But please, if you are listening to me, you have a couple more hours, if that. The time to leave is now. If you have defied the mandatory evacuations, Sanibel, Captiva, Boca Grande, the reality of the situation is that those islands are not going to be what we love and what we have known. This will change what they look like. We will recover, and we will get it back to what we love it as, okay? We will, and we will clean up. But this is one of the strongest storms that I have seen in a long time, not only across our state, but across the entire Gulf of Mexico. We had Michael that made landfall as a Category 5. That was a 160. We saw what that did to Panama City, Tyndall Air Force Base, Mexico Beach. We had blue tarps on people's roofs for months, if not years after the storm. So I just really want to stress the seriousness of the situation here. There's no exaggeration. So that is my message here, that this is a storm that is going to bring a lasting impact. And look at the motion. It's only heading at 9 miles an hour. This is not a quick shot and then it's out of here. This is going to be a longer duration event. We're seeing the bands right now, and what I have done is just so you know that we're getting you the most accurate information, we are using 3 radars. We are using Tampa, we're using Miami, and we are using Wink Live Doppler 3X. I have just about 30 minutes ago changed some settings on our radar to detect 200-mile-an-hour wind. So if the winds get that high, and we obviously hope that it doesn't, you will know where they are, and you will know if it's going to be impacting your community. So now at this time, let me kind of show you some of the wind speeds that are being indicated. So I'm going to turn off Wink Live Doppler 3X. In the radar, because it's up to 200 miles an hour, the scope of our range is limited as a result. But once it starts to get into perspective, we're going to get a better look at it. But let me show you some of the wind speeds that are right now being analyzed with the eye wall. That's the worst part of the storm. The various colors that you see, these are different wind speeds and to different calibers. Okay, and I'm going to zoom on in, and now we're using, looks like Key West radar, and let's analyze some of these wind speeds. And what's actually happening, you'll notice how it goes from a brown to a green. Literally, the winds are so strong in this northeastern corridor, it's run out of colors to associate it to, and then it has to restart from the previous colors at the beginning of the legend. We call that folding. But let me just show you some of the wind speeds that are right now being detected. 127. Let me take a look at this bottom portion of the eye wall. 132 miles an hour above the surface, the wind speeds that are being detected. That is literally equivalent to an EF2 tornado, if not an EF3. That is what is approaching Southwest Florida. Literally, life-threatening wind and life-threatening storm surge. That is what is contained in this Category 4 and borderline Category 5 storm. Okay, so here's the track that it has been taking, and what we can do is we can almost extrapolate and show where it's going to be heading from here. In the general track, you know, you're going to see some wobbles here and there, and it looks like that's what it's been doing. You can see the yellow line, a wobble to the left, a wobble to the right, but you want to look for the general straight line, and the general straight line has it making landfall anywhere between, I would say, Englewood to Sanibel. But the problem is, the core of it and where it actually makes landfall, that doesn't mean that that's a good scenario for Sanibel as well as Fort Myers Beach because of the counter clockwise motion around the storm. It's going to be forcing up our tides, and what we will do throughout the morning, we have 2 tide sensors within our area. We have one in Naples, we have one in downtown Fort Myers. We literally have one about a mile down the street here at Wing. So we will know how fast the tide levels are going up and also to what level. So that is what I have on my end. Corey, Lindsay, we're going to toss it back to you as we will continue to track Hurricane Ian.
All right, Matt, thank you. And the chief coming in, taking a very serious tone because he wants you to know, especially along those coastal areas, the time is now. You know, you heard him say that. For everyone else who went inland and you are sheltering with friends and family, I think the message is, yes, this is serious, but you are prepared. You are in the place you are supposed to be, and our team, all of our meteorologists are here, and we are going to be walking you through, you know, the several hours that are going to follow up. We were both here in 2017 during Hurricane Irma. I didn't quite understand, and I remember at that time them explaining, okay, you're going to hear the train, which train sounds, which is that eye wall. Then it's going to be quiet. So if you are new and you're feeling a little bit anxious right now, we're not physically next to you, but we are as close as we can be, and we're walking you through this, and they're going to let you know every step of the way when you need to be inside the most interior place of your home and when it's going to be safe to go out, and it's not going to be today.
Yeah, and you know, we're all human, right? We all get anxious or nervous about this, especially when you see this right off our coastline. But that's why we have to prepare.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why we do what we can do to keep our lives safe. Let's go to some power outages here. So the latest numbers that we have are pretty widespread at this point for some LCEC customers and FPL. So if you're experiencing a power outage, you can report it. FPL customers, you can call 1-800-468-8243. LCEC customers, you can call 239-656-2300. But like I've been telling you, if it's widespread power outages with the smart grid technology, especially that FPL has, they are already going to know where the power is out. They know where it's going to be, and then they're going to assess the damage and try to get in there.
And you even heard Karen Ryan with LCEC say the same thing. You know, if it's widespread, don't waste the phone battery on calling us, because we know it's going to take time. Let's get over to traffic anchor Belinda Post, who's giving us a look at why, once we hit this sustained 40 miles an hour wind, we should not be on bridges.
Right now we are taking a live look. This is the Sanibel Toll Plaza. The conditions totally undrivable. You can see some of the precipitation and what's happening there with the weather in these lights. But the camera right here, it is shaking, and it's shaking from those high wind speeds. I just checked in with Weather Authority meteorologist Casey Sherman, who said these winds over here, they are roughly around 50 miles an hour. That is past the 40-mile-an-hour mark, where Lee County will not respond to emergencies. Let's pull up our graphic so we can show you exactly why. If we can just click back. Lisa over there was working on something showing us wind in Collier County, but we are going to try to get that graphic. It's probably the last one on the tab, but what I can tell you is they do a great job of explanation, EOC does, about why they stop responding, and that's because that then becomes life-threatening for them. That means fire crews or other emergency crews, if they are to respond to that hazard during speeds that top 40 miles an hour right there, that's when they will close bridges. Now, this is a really good point to make. They're not going to physically close it. They're not going to put out these barricades. But again, this is when authorities are saying you need to stay off bridges and the roads leading up to them when those sustained winds reach 40 miles an hour, because that's where tropical wind force is. It's already over that there in Sanibel and probably other areas as well.
And Lee County did send an update to us just about 5 minutes ago, saying that the fire department, emergency personnel, they're not operating right now as far as going out to calls. They're all hunkered down in their own separate sites or in the EOC, and the moment they can, they will be going out. But the spokesperson for Lee County, Betsy Clayton, sending that email and saying at this point they need to stay where they are. And there's been an update overnight. About 3,800 people in Lee County did evacuate to actual shelters in the county. So I'm glad at least people taking that warning seriously, and I'm sure many others finding friends inland that they can go visit.
And I really think there was a shift, and we got that 11 p.m. cone, right? That forecast cone changed. It shifted even more If you were someone who was on the fence, thinking I can ride this out, you saw that. You know, I have family that made that decision. It's tough to leave your home. It's very emotional, but you're going to be alive because of it, you know, potentially. So it was just the right decision to make if you did decide to leave. What you're looking at behind us, though, again, is the latest that we have from Wink's Live Doppler 3X. It appears now that the eye of the storm is basically parallel with Collier County. Weather Authority meteorologist Casey Sherman, I believe, is ready to go, telling us what we're going to be expecting when it comes to Collier County.
You know what? I think she needs a few more minutes. Let's try to go out to our reporter. Yeah, it's about 60 seconds. Let's try to go out to our reporter, Claire Galt, who is live on Sanibel right now. Claire, we know you are tucked away where you can be safe in elevation 2. How are things there?
That's right. I'm on the balcony outside of my hotel right now, and so my hotel still does not have power. We haven't had power for about an hour and a half now, but remember, we expected this. We expected to lose power because Sanibel is in Zone A. That's a mandatory evacuation zone, and that's for a reason. And as these hours go by, that reason becomes more and more evident, and I'll kind of show you what I mean. I'm going to have my photographer, Jack. Jack, can we come over here for a minute? You can see the sun's starting to come up now, so hopefully now this will give you a little bit of a better picture. Palm trees swaying back and forth. That one's kind of to its side a bit. The intensity kind of varies by the minute. A few minutes ago, the rain was super heavy. Now I would say it's a little bit moderate, but those winds can get so strong. And Jack, if we come over here, I'll show them when we were sitting inside right here. These doors, sometimes the winds have gotten so strong that these doors will just slam back into each other, and we can really actually feel the wind and feel the rain when we're sitting there waiting to come out here and give you guys an update. Now, thankfully, because the conditions are bad, we are some of the only people at this hotel, but we are not the only people. Earlier this morning around midnight when I started giving you guys updates, I met a family who actually came here from Cape Coral. Now, they told me they left Cape Coral because they were nervous about flooding. So they packed up their family. They're a family of 5. Packed up their family, their puppy, and all their things, and they came here they evacuated and came here to Sanibel, not because they thought that the storm would be better here, but because of the elevation. They're going to be at a higher height here, and so they thought that that would be a better option.
I think it's going to hit just the same, but the elevation is definitely going to be better. Being higher up, you're not going to be scared to be flooded out of your house. So that was the biggest thing, especially with a family of 5.
Now, in this scary time, there's a lot that's bad. There's a lot of uncertainty, but I think it's comforting to always see neighbors helping neighbors. And so I bring that up because I just wanted to mention the hotel staff has been so kind, so comforting to us. Just a few minutes ago, I was sitting inside, and obviously I was a little bit tired. I've been out here since midnight giving you guys updates. I think they noticed that they brought me a coffee and they brought us a breakfast buffet. We're going to go eat it after this, but it's just so nice. And so, you know, text your friends, text your family, let them know you're here for them. It's always nice, you know, to know that you're not alone. And you guys aren't alone either. We've got our amazing meteorologists, we've got our anchors, we've got us in the field, and our amazing hardworking people behind the scenes back at the station. So just a little bit of light in this scary time. Live in Sanibel, Claire Galt, Wink News.
I wanted to relay a new update from the National Hurricane Center because of the increase in speed with 155 miles an hour as a upper end Category 4. There now has been an upgrade in our surge potential from 8 to 12 feet to now 12 to 16 feet. And that is shaded in the pink and the purple for Charlotte and Lee County. So to reiterate, the upgrade to 12 to 16 feet has just been made from the National Hurricane Center of saltwater inundation, the wind being forced up at high tide by later on today. Into Collier County, your storm surge 7 to 11 feet. And then for Sarasota County up the coastline, 6 to 10. But the biggest update, they essentially have increased the previous storm surge forecast by around 4 feet. Okay? So what I want to do right now, want to take that forecast and put it on top of our local high tides. So what you're looking at, these are the high tides for the general vicinity. We'll start from the north, work our way south. And the problem is that Ian is going to be making landfall at high tide. It's going to be making landfall this afternoon. So you have the greatest water level rise in addition to the storm, producing the surge of about 12 to 16 feet. So let's start in Sarasota County and Charlotte County. Englewood, 4 o'clock. Gasparilla Sound, about 3:30. Charlotte Harbor, 6:04. For Boca Grande, about 3:46. For our next stop into Lee County, downtown Fort Myers, about 7:06 is going to be high tide. For Cape Coral, about 6:13. For Matlacha, 5:41. For Captiva, 2:38. And Sanibel, 3:11. This is all going to be around landfall, and it will be coinciding with high tide. The general colors that you see here, and I know initially when you look at it, it does look scary. This is our home with the possibility of it being flooded by storm surge. I will tell you, this is a worst case scenario model, but let's be quite frank here. This is a worst case situation. We have almost a Category 5 that will be making landfall at high tide, and we will be on the northeastern quadrant with the maximum surge. So this is not out of the realm of possibilities. We hope it does not happen, but it is not impossible considering all the dynamics that are in play right now. The storm surge outlook into Collier County. The high tide for Naples at about 2:45, Marco Island 3:21, Everglades City 3:35. If you want a specific zoomed-in view of where you live in reference to this map, you can go onto the National Hurricane Center website and you click on Storm Surge Inundation. You can zoom on in and it will take you street by street level. Right now, we are at a 155 mile per hour Category 4. I want to now show you how we base the wind speeds off of. We call this the Saffir-Simpson scale. And we are right now at 155. 2 miles an hour and greater, and it's a Category 5. That is how powerful, that is how significant this storm is. And it is a storm please do not take lightly. This is as serious as it gets for our area, and one of the strongest storms in modern times that our area has ever seen. This will not be like Irma, will not be like Charlie. In many cases, if the forecast comes to fruition, this will be worse. We have the potential to be without power, obviously for days, but weeks, if not months. So now is the time to fully charge everything that you have while we still have power. I will tell you, in this graphic, I made it about 20 minutes ago. So granted, it will be increasing in number, but at last check, the local power outages, we are at about 4,000 plus into Collier County, over 3,000 in Lee, over 2,000 in Charlotte, over 6,000 in Sarasota County. In total, Southwest Florida, 17,000 customers without power. That number will continue to shoot up. So now is the time. Charge the phones. Charge everything that you need, because we don't know how long you will have that charge for. If you are operating a generator, make sure to not operate the generator inside. Don't do it in the garage. Don't even do it close to the home, because we don't want to risk carbon monoxide poisoning with the generator. So the safe distance is no less than 10 feet. I even recommend 15 and greater, okay? Now, the generator, use after the storm. Use after the storm, okay? 17,000 people without power. Let's do another update on the wind that is being analyzed on all 3 radars, Tampa, Key West, as well as Wink Live Doppler 3X. And the worst part of the storm is now, and let's do a couple observations. The diameter of the eye has actually been tightening up and shrinking. The diameter of the eye from north to south is about 30 miles. From east to west, it's about 25 miles. That is smaller than what it was last night. Last night it was 40. Now it's about 25 to 30. And it is essentially maximizing in strength. It is getting stronger as it is approaching the southwest Florida coastline. In reference to, let's do a couple, the distance tracker here, it is about 50 miles to the southwest of Sanibel. However, the tornado-like winds and the northeastern eye wall, let me get rid of this, the northeastern eye wall is only about 20 to 25 miles away. The system is heading at about 9 miles an hour. So it will be approaching Sanibel and Captiva within the next 2 to 4 hours, if not earlier. So that is, and I want to show you as we analyze some of the wind speeds on our radar network. You're going to see a lot of various colors. And I'm going to combo all of the radars. So this is being analyzed right now by Tampa. So the Tampa radar, some of the wind speeds, 117, 142. That is on the western side of the eye. Now, let's try to keep that offshore as much as possible, as you can imagine, but let's do one more sampling of some of the winds. 151 miles an hour, right now being picked up aloft with Ian on the western side of the storm. So Corey and Lindsay, it's going to be a rough day. It's going to be a rough day. We will get through it. Wink is going to be with you every step of the way. And once that eye wall, the tornado-like winds, starts to push on shore, I will tell you to treat it like a 3 to 4 hour tornado situation. So that's when you get to the lowest level, away from windows into the interior. Have something to protect your brain from any potential flying debris, and you want to insulate yourself as much as possible. So we will let you know. It's going to be shortly here within the next few hours when we will see that eye wall and the tornado wind.
Yeah, that's great advice, Matt. And, you know, right before we went to Matt, I think Claire, who's at the Sanibel Marriott, so just before you cross over the causeway, she's not actually on the island, reiterated that tone. And if you're new to Florida, she's getting that sense we're all in this together, and our meteorology team is going to be here every step of the way.
Yeah, and we have reporters. They're staying as safe as they possibly can. That's utmost of importance to keep them safe. Let's go to Gail Levy, who is live at the JW Marriott on Marco Island for us right now.
Good morning, guys. Renzo, my photographer, and I just got to our hotel out here on Marco Island, and when we were making the drive over, we could definitely feel some of the effects of the wind. Some trees were down, some branches were in the road, and we even did see a 7-Eleven that was all boarded up. Now, quickly, we'll show you what's outside. Our service out here isn't very good, so we're shooting this from the phone, and I understand it is dark, but bear with me. If you can see any of those moving figments, those are trees moving in the darkness. There's some lights out here that I'm hoping the camera will pick up to show you guys, but these trees are really just whipping around in the wind. And like I mentioned, we did already see some downed branches. We didn't see any flooding on our way into the hotel, but right now we're going to try and find a better vantage point to give you guys a better view and to keep you guys as safe as possible. For now, back to you guys.
All right, and that's our reporter Gail Levy joining us from Marco Island, staying safe down there. And if we're looking, Matt, at Wink Doppler 3X, it looks like Ian's quickly approaching the southern part of our viewing area, parallel. For families down there, what are they going to be experiencing over these next few hours?
The one thing that now that it's parallel to Collier County is think of the wind direction. The wind direction now is coming in from the south. You will gradually start to see the water levels rise along the coastline. So for Collier County, we are starting gradually the surge event. For Charlotte as well as Sarasota County, that hasn't happened yet. Your wind is coming off the land, and if anything, you're probably seeing lower than normal tides. But for Collier, they're first up for the surge, then Lee, then Charlotte. Has to do with that wind direction, and now that they're parallel, that wind is getting forced up. We've already seen tropical storm force wind for Collier County along the coastline, hurricane force wind gusts, 75 plus will be possible, and already we are seeing some pretty significant bands as they are rotating around Ian.
And Matt, if we can focus in maybe in portions, where the Caloosahatchee come in. Think of downtown Fort Myers, South Cape Coral. The Cape Coral Fire Chief was very concerned about areas south of Cape Coral Parkway, all those homes that are on the water. When are they going to start to see that level rise right in their own backyard?
This afternoon and this evening.
Okay.
Because essentially what we need to visualize in our head is that once it's parallel to our area, that's when it's going to start because of the change in the wind direction. You have 155 miles an hour of force, and that force is going to drive up the water. And the thing with Cape Coral in particular, you know, our canals and our waterways, there's only a given volume.
Sure.
And we're literally pushing too much water in a small space. So ironically, you could have even greater surge in some of the waterways in the canals in Cape Coral. So I've already heard of some stories within the past 12 hours. My wife, her friend, is in Cape Coral, and I won't say any names here, but saying the heck with the storm, I'll be fine. This is getting to be an extremely serious situation, and I highly urge, if you're listening in Cape Coral, do not take a chance.
And it's hard, you know, it's your home, it's your memories, it's your family, it's hard to leave. It's very emotional. But at this point, if someone was going to leave, I mean, really, bottom line here, within the next hour, and that window is closing rapidly.
It's closing fast. Get away from the water. That's what we always say. Just get away from the water, head east, go east. Just get away from the coastline as your last case resort here.
It's 7:30 this morning. We got a full day ahead of us for the entire Southwest Florida community because Collier's seeing it right now. But really, I know you're honed in on where you think this thing's going to make landfall. When do you think? Will it be today and then tomorrow morning? We'll obviously still feel some effects after, but you think it'll be today?
Worst part of the storm is going to be this afternoon, this evening. And then Thursday, we get the tail end. We will still see some surge, but not to the caliber of when we will maximize